Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku lived in a world where only women have quirks? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
What dream do you have? Everyone must answer this question at some point in their lives. Some people spend their entire lives aimlessly spinning their wheels because they are unable to discover the solution within themselves. Some people are aware of their dreams, but for a variety of reasons, they decide to give them up. Some people, on the other hand, find their dreams and cling to them until they are realized. There seems to be a second question for this group to respond to. If you could have your dream, what would you give? Some people give up their time. They work on their task for years and decades until they finish it. Others give up their other aspirations. To the detriment of any prior objectives, these individuals devote all of their energy to their one task. Some decide to sacrifice their friends and family in order to achieve their goals. They push them away and devote themselves entirely to their quest, happy to stay by themselves in order to achieve what is impossible to achieve in any other way. Another sacrifice made by the last group is their humanity. They carry out heinous deeds that anyone with a shred of conscience would object to as they pursue their vision of the future beyond any boundaries that may have previously defined them. People's aspirations and the extent to which they pursue them are specific to each person and each stage of their lives. In one moment, what you yearned for might be a faraway memory. You may later feel a sharp regret for the depths of depravity you previously experienced. As long as you are breathing on this planet, you must make every decision regarding the questions at every second of every day. Many people aspire to power in all of its manifestations. The authority to subjugate others. The ability to inspire others. The ability to eliminate what is already there. The ability to defend one's house. The ability to acquire additional power for its own sake. Both power and people come in a variety of forms. Another objective is money. It might be the objective in and of itself for one man. For others, it's just another way to have the freedom to live your own way. For those who seek it, it serves as both a means and an end. But there was one boy in this world who had no desire for wealth or power. There was only one thing he needed in this world. He desired to be unique. The magnitude of his wish set him apart from everyone else who made the same claim. He didn't want everyone to love him. He had no desire to be an exceptional athlete, a genius, or a celebrity in any way. Being unique was his only dream, but he only needed to be unique for one person. Eventually, he hoped, someone would look at him and realize that he was all they needed. What All Might was for the world, he aspired to be for one person. He expressed his desire to be a hero for this reason. He wanted someone to view him the way he did after witnessing how people viewed heroes. The only issue with this dream is that people with similar dreams are never treated kindly by the world. Like a flower before it can bloom, they cause pain and shatter those dreams. He would be asked his question after everything had been lost. If you could have your dream, what would you give? This is the tale of Izuku Midoriya, a young man with a good heart who lived in a more sinister world than he deserved. This is the tale of a man who crawled out of hell after falling there. This is the tale of a hunter and forge master's birth and death. This is the tale of his dream and the cost he incurred in order to pursue it. Individuals are not created equal. As I grew older, I had to come to terms with that. Some people are simply better than others, regardless of our best efforts or desires. Even people with modest skills can become heroes in a world full of eccentricities if they train hard and push themselves to the limit. But this is only true for women, who are fortunate enough to be born with a quirk. Everyone may have a quirk from birth in some worlds. Only women ever displayed the superhuman skills known as quirks in the one I live in. Men had traces of the gene, but they were unable to manifest anything themselves. Instead, they were only able to pass on familial abilities to their daughters. There are now so many superhuman women that almost every woman on the planet has some sort of peculiarity. Nowadays, hardly any girl is born without one, and the majority of those without come from older generations. The men simply needed to adjust to a world in which they were no longer the dominant force in society. Women were not the gracious winners they liked to think they would be when they gained an advantage over men, despite the fact that most feminists like to fool themselves. The assholes now usually eat a bun rather than a hot dog, which is the only significant change. When the men realized there was nothing they could do to stop the shift, their attempts to fight back eventually failed. When the professional heroes started to show up, this became even more common. These influential people, who were all female, were the best in terms of eccentricities. With tools like armored suits and other technological advancements, some men attempted to become heroes, but the new status quo made sure that men would always be excluded from such high positions. They didn't require any ideas from the men. Men had better come to terms with the fact that women were at the top of this new world. If they didn't, they would be banished to the periphery of society and made to endure harsh comments from boys and outright bullying from girls. Like me, sort of. I am immediately lifted up by my arms and legs, flipped, and thrown headfirst into a trash can, appending my train of thought. Before I hear a girl say, "Serves you right, Deku. You are in the trash where you belong," I can only hear the girls laughing hysterically. I recognize the voice as that of my regular bully and sister's best friend, Katsumi Bakugo. She never passed up the opportunity to ruin my life. In remembrance of the oppressed women who came before her, she felt obligated to erase any desire I might have had to become a hero. She refused to simply watch a man decide he wanted to be a hero. It doesn't matter that she didn't treat Izumi badly despite the fact that she was a girl without a quirk. Oh my god, no, compared to a quirkless guy, a quirkless girl is always far more innately capable of becoming a hero. I mean, compared to girl power, that extra testosterone and muscle mass is pretty useless. I simply put up with the beatings as they came. What else is there to do, after all? They have the support of all the teachers. The male teachers want you to give up as soon as possible, and the female teachers dislike men who try to be heroes. The other children simply accept it as the norm. As long as self-delusion prevails over common sense, people will continue to preach about becoming heroes while beating up those who oppose them. After a moment of struggling, the trash can finally topples over and I fall to the ground. I see a hand reaching out in front of my face just as I'm about to push off the ground. One of my few friends at this school, Hitoshi Shinso, is there when I look up. Since I still wanted to be a hero, most of the other guys didn't want to hang out with me. They had already dismissed that dream as a childish fantasy and disregarded me until I, like everyone else, had to face the truth. But even after being shunned by everyone else, Hitoshi still took the time to get in touch with me. "Thanks, man," I say as I take the hand and stand up. While Hitoshi picks off a few that I can't see, I brush the bits of trash off my clothes. It's always annoying as hell whenever they dump me in a trash can. I keep finding weird stuff for days. I once found a piece of old gum inside my pencil case after a week. Hitoshi states, "I can't say that I miss being dunked too," with a tone that betrays empathy. Makes me kind of glad that I stopped dreaming about becoming a hero. I respond, "Yeah, but we always need more therapists in the world," in reference to his new ambition to work as a therapist. The world doesn't have nearly enough guys using mindfuckery on people and getting paid money to do it. Hitoshi smirks and scoffs in response. "You apparently have never heard of advertising, it seems," he says. "Therapists are just little league in comparison. But hey, at least they do a lot for sad sacks like us. I like to think that I am tougher than all of those other little whiners out there who couldn't become a hero, present company included," I reply with a grin on my face as well. "Oh, so you think you are a big man because you are still obsessed with being a hero?" Hitoshi inquires. "Let's see how long that lasts. Hell, I bet my sister is going to be a hero before you, even with her complex about her quirk." "Come on," I say. "Hina shouldn't be so worried about her quirk. It is literally just a puppeteering quirk. It doesn't even really qualify as brainwashing." Hitoshi says, "Yeah, well," in a halting tone, "she is going to have to get over herself one of these days if she is going to try for UA like she keeps saying." "It'll be great," I reply. "Me and Hina in the hero program, you in general studies. We can even have lunch together." "I think that both of us will probably be in general studies," he replies. "After all, I don't love your chances of making it into the hero program." "I'll be fine," I respond, dismissing his concern. "I am already a pretty decent fighter. I have around 3 years to go before I have to be ready. As it stands, I can hold my own against anyone in school easy." The left hook is launched into my face, rocking my head to the side. The crowd watching the fight pushes me forward again as I stagger back from the force of the blow. They are undoubtedly not satisfied with the violence they have witnessed thus far. A bloodbath is what they desire. The explosion explodes point blank into my stomach, bending me over as I am propelled forward by the newly acquired momentum. As my opponent backs away to admire their handiwork, I fight to keep from falling to my knees as the air leaves my lungs. Katsumi says, well, with a sadistic sparkle in her red eyes and a sly smile on her face. "I'm surprised that you are finally managing to stay on your feet after a couple of my hits, Deku. I guess you aren't all talk about wanting to be a hero. Not that it will do you any good when you are just a pathetic man." There's a procession of wheezing before I breathe. "Better than being a flat girl like you, Kachan," I respond, giving the moniker as much derogatory impact as possible. Sad to see you only take after your mom in personality and not her figure. Must be why you are so mad. No guy wants to fuck a girl with the assets of a boy. She immediately loses her mind and rushes forward to hit me with another explosive combo. But I managed to get my bearings back in time to avoid her initial blow and return the favor with an uppercut that caused her head to snap back. To give myself more space to work, I kick my chest afterward. After being hurt, Katsumi is momentarily stunned. She winces a little from the blow's aftereffects as she reaches up to her jaw. Her gaze then shifts back to me, growing even more ferocious. Before, she was only going to beat me up. She's going to try her hardest to hurt me now. This could have been an error. I reached this unexpected conclusion as I felt Katsumi's knee become very familiar with my jaw after she used her explosions to propel herself forward into a powerful hit. Yes, this was an error. After Katsumi finally made the decision to stop really kicking the living daylights out of me, I lean against the wall, nursing my sore ribs and ignoring the swelling in my jaw. After the fighting was over, the students had largely left, but Katsumi had remained for a short while. As she gets ready to leave, she says, "You should take this as a lesson, Deku," without even looking at me. "You will never be a hero. It doesn't matter if you are a man or if you had ever been born with a quirk. When you get down to it, you are a weak and pathetic wretch. You should probably hop off a building before you finish dragging Izumi down with you." After saying those nice and humorous things, she probably heads out to hang out with her other friends. At last, Hitoshi enters, and I put one arm around his shoulders to support him as we start to walk home. During the fight, I saw him a few times and tried to approach him to offer assistance, but he was kept out by the same group of people who were keeping me in. He says, "Sorry, Izuku," in a voice that is obviously filled with guilt because he was only able to witness my public beating. I should have done more to help. "It's okay, Hitoshi," I genuinely respond. "You tried way harder to stop the fight than anyone else. Even if you did get in, we would probably be in the same boat right now. I can take the concussions for the both of us. You need your brain intact if you want to get into college. We both know I have brain cells to spare since I am so much smarter than you. After a few more fights against Katsumi, you might even be able to beat me at chess for once." Hitoshi merely gives me a sardonic glance before slapping me across the side. I can tell that he is feeling a little better now because of the tiny smile that appeared on his face when he heard my grunt of pain after being touched on my injured side. Izumi stopped us as we were ready to leave the school premises. There were many similarities between my twin and me. Our mother gave us both green hair and the capacity to weep uncontrollably. In both academics and athletics, we were at the top of our grades. Despite our lack of eccentricities, we both admired and aspired to be heroes. But there is one thing that made us unique and shaped who we are now. She was born a girl, and I was born a boy. All it took for us to go down different paths in life was this difference. Izumi was embraced and celebrated, while I was excluded and despised. She was treated like a diamond in the rough, but I had to earn everything. She was viewed as treasure, while I was viewed as trash. The world believed in her, but I was beaten because of my beliefs. The worst thing is that she never believed in me, but I never stopped believing in her dream. Taking my weight off of Hitoshi's support, I strengthened my returning strength and stand on my own 2 feet. He gave me a look that suggested he wasn't sure, but I simply nodded for him to continue. He sighed, listened, and walked away from my sister and me. With a tone full of condemnation, Izumi asks, "Picking fights with Kachan again, are we?" Telling her, "I didn't pick a fight, she started it and I defended myself." She responds, "You call that defending yourself? If she hadn't gotten bored, you wouldn't be able to stand right now." "I don't see how you can even spend time around her these days," I respond. "She was bad enough when we were kids. Now that she's gotten stronger and all of the praise has gone to her head, she is about one step away from being a villain." I've discovered over the years that Izumi has a lot of triggers. When she senses that her friend is being insulted, it's one of the most painful. When Izumi says, "You take that back," her voice becomes growl-like. "Kachan is going to be an incredible hero. You've seen how hard she works to get into UA. I have also seen her unrepentantly bully anyone she doesn't like," I reply. "I can't exactly picture All Might beating on a nerd in junior high. Can you?" Izumi says, "She just needs a chance to change. When she finally grows past this, she can be even better." "You can't grow a healthy tree out of a rotten seed," I assert. "You can't improve something which is flawed from its foundation. It's like trying to fix a car's engine when the entire chassis is rusted beyond repair or trying to fix the bathroom tiles in a house with a sinking foundation. She can't change because the core of who she is has never been a good person. She is mean and vindictive and looks down on anyone who tries to better themselves. She doesn't believe that anyone can become more than what they have always been. You are either dirt or a diamond, and she believes that she is a bigger diamond than All Might. Izumi yells, "Why can't you believe she could prove you wrong?" After me. What little patience she had with me has finally evaporated. Because she could never bring herself to even want to change. I respond with, she might one day be forced to play to someone's rules and restrain herself, but that doesn't change who she'll be deep down. She will forever be someone who doesn't believe in change. She thinks that everyone is the way they were always meant to be, you included. Izumi asks, her voice taking on a menacing tone, what is that supposed to mean? If she doesn't believe that someone can grow beyond what they were born with, then what does that mean for you? I ask. She says she thinks you can be a hero, but we know that she is either lying to you or treating you as the special little exception to her rule. I bet it's the former. You are a girl, but you never gained a quirk. In her eyes, you are just as useless as a man, as me. You'll try and work to get into UA together, I say, speculating about Katsumi's strategy. Together, you two may even be accepted into the hero program. Unfortunately, though, you simply cannot keep up without a personal quirk. As a result, you gradually lag behind while she succeeds in every endeavor. You're not bothered by this, of course. You are Kachan's staunchest ally. The fact that she is living her dream makes you very happy. But after a while, you have to leave the hero course, which is very unfortunate. However, that only serves to highlight how difficult it is and how amazing Kachan's success is. Thus, you continue to be Kachan's staunchest supporter while she goes on to become a household name and hero. She drags you along with her to remind herself of how much better she is than you, but all she sees when she looks at you is a failure. Izumi, doesn't that sound like a blast? Before I can say anything else, I find myself looking to the right, along with a new stinging sensation on my cheek that goes unpleasantly with the ache in my jaw. I see that Izumi is slowly lowering the hand she used to slap me, her hands balling up into fists in anger, and tears slowly pooling in her eyes as she looks at me with heartbreak and loathing. This is not the typical emotional crying that our family is known for. Rather, it is the kind of crying that happens when we are genuinely hurt. I feel my own heart tighten as I watch a couple of glistening tears fall down her cheeks and land on the ground. You really are an asshole, Izumi responds. I knew I should have listened to Kachan about you. Izumi, I say, reaching out to apologize, but before I can do so, she slaps my hand away. You are my twin brother, Zuku, so despite everything, I cared about you, she says. How could I not? But despite everything in the world telling you that you can't be a hero, I saw you strive to be one every single day. Even if you were to become a hero, you would be killed the moment you attempted to battle a woman with a powerful quirk. It is simply demonstrated by each battle with Kachan. But you persisted in trying in spite of everything. Losing the opportunity to make friends didn't matter. Even if you had to put all of your time and energy into chasing your dream, it made no difference. Whether you died in the end didn't matter. No matter how many setbacks made you more resentful over the years, you simply persisted. You resemble your father exactly. I say in a desperate tone, Izumi, come on, you don't really mean that. You just get so angry at yourself and the world that you bottle it up inside, Izumi explains. Eventually, it builds up so much that you try to take it out on others if you can. What makes you believe that you fight Kachan so frequently? It's not because you're defending yourself. All you want is the opportunity to harm someone else. No, 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 I respond. You're mistaken. He is not like me at all. Izumi, I'm not. I beg you to trust me. I am not going to stand here and let you treat me like shit like Dad did to Mom, Izumi declares. I am not just going to watch you become the same hateful man that Dad was. I will not serve as your Hisashi's Inko. Like Mom, I don't want to become hollow on the inside. I try to get in touch with her one last time and say, Izumi, please, I'm not that bad. Never will I be that awful. Let's just talk, please. Izumi says, you are acting the exact same way Dad used to before Mom gave up, after her tears had gradually stopped and she had at last put on a brave face. He would apologize, say that he could change, and then would do the same thing in a week, she says. You are merely the sequel, despite your assurance that you wouldn't become like him. Although I can't deny that you are my brother, I no longer wish to interact with you. Izumi, I mumble. If there was one person I could rely on, it would be Izumi. When I was 6 years old and terrified of thunderstorms, she would cuddle up with me and help bandage me after I diverted Dad's attention from him during one of his outings so that he wouldn't turn his sights on her and Mom. She was my happy anchor that kept me grounded no matter what, but now that my anchor was gone, I could feel myself losing that sense of security. I want to act as though our last name and mother are the only things that bind us together. I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to hang out with you, and I don't want to be around you anymore, she declares. After we start attending different schools, we will be finished. With college, I can make great progress, and we won't have to meet again. I can have my life, and you can have yours. Izumi, please don't do this, I say, feeling as though a hole was opening beneath me and I was plunging into an endless abyss. She says, goodbye, Zuko, and she sincerely hopes that you find happiness despite everything. With you in my life, I simply can't find mine. After saying those words, she leaves me for the last time. I know I will see her at home, but it won't be the same. She is now just a stranger to me and someone I will never be able to get in touch with again. When Hitoshi comes over to see how I'm doing after seeing Izumi go, I just put on my typical smile and act as though nothing had just fallen apart. I suppose all of my practice is finally paying off. I was walking aimlessly around the city, my vision a haze that I was not really seeing, and eventually I was passing under a bridge when I heard a voice. Hitoshi and I had parted ways after I persuaded him that I was okay and wouldn't collapse and die the moment he looked away. It said, "Oh, looky here," referring to a meat suit that was exactly the right size for me. I suppose you can't win them all, but shame it must be a man. I barely had time to take in the statement before I was encased in a repulsive sludge-like substance that bound me and made it impossible for me to move, slowly beginning to pour up my body and into my nose and throat. As I started to choke on the slime, I came to the realization that this was how I would die my dreams unfulfilled, my family embarrassed of me, vulnerable to a random villain, and alone. What a terrible way to pass away. As darkness descended, I heard a voice yell, "Texas Smash." The last thing I remembered before everything went dark was a tremendous gust of wind blowing through the tunnel. Through the darkness, a voice yells, "Hey, hey," and he feels a gentle, repetitive, and mildly grating pat on his cheek. "Hey, kid. Are you all right?" Even though I'm an All Might fanboy, I can't help but scoot back to get some space from the well-known heroine when I open my eyes and see All Might's worried face inches from mine. I exclaim, "Oh my god, you are All Might." Instead of wearing her typical uniform, she opted to wear a white t-shirt that clung to her muscles and curves, paired with green cargo pants and boots. "Yes, I am," she says, posing. "I apologize for taking so long to save the day. In the sewer system, I got lost. I can't claim to be too familiar with Musudafu's layout." "That's okay," I respond, still in awe. What became of the villain? I searched everywhere, but the slime monster was nowhere to be seen. "Don't worry," All Might says, displaying a 2-liter bottle of the sludge. "I trapped her in here. Now it should be simple to transport her to the police station." After remembering that I should probably get an autograph, I started searching through my backpack for my drawing notebook, where I had drawn many pro-heroes, including All Might, so it was ideal for an autograph. When I opened it, I discovered that All Might's drawing already had an autograph. "Thank you so much," I respond. "This is a massive honor." She puts the bottle of soda in one of her pants pockets and says, "No problem, so she'd better leave. There are many more villains to defeat." I decide on the spur of the moment to ask her a question as she starts to jump away, and since my only opportunity to speak with All Might is rapidly passing, I jump forward, grab onto her leg, and cling to life as we soar into the sky. The only reason I was able to withstand the G-forces I was subjected to was because of my physical training. I don't know if she saw me or what, but my eyes were clamped shut and the roar of the wind was louder than anything else, so I think All Might realized at some point that I was latched onto her because she went on to land on the top of a building. I fall to the ground and enjoy the sensation of a solid surface beneath me when she finally stops on solid land. "Kid, what the devil was that?" Surprised, All Might asks, "Why did you hold on to me like that? You might have taken your own life." Stealing my nerves, I get off the roof and say, "I wanted to ask you a question. Can a man ever become a pro-hero? You would be the first to know. Is it possible for me to become as skilled as you?" "I don't think that a man can become a pro-hero," All Might said after pausing for a moment to seem as though she was unsure of how to respond. "You don't?" I inquire, remembering years of taunts and harassment. "I have witnessed professionals with years of experience and strong quirks die because they were simply not powerful enough," she says, adding that, being a pro-hero requires more than just a strong heart. "I don't think someone without even a quirk could make it in this field of work. Don't assume that being a man is the cause of this. Gender is a meaningless factor, and I don't think it matters. I'd say the same thing to a woman without any peculiarities. Ultimately, you simply lack the necessary strength. You can become a doctor, a firefighter, or a doctor if you want to help others, All Might says in a regretful but serious tone. I just can't support your dream of being a hero. She pivots and then leaps away to confront another criminal or threat. I simply stand on the building's roof and process what she said. Even for the greatest hero, my dream was hopeless. It reminded me of my conversation with Izumi. Everything is becoming dark, as if the light I've known for years is gradually disappearing into pitch black darkness. For years, I have simply been deceiving myself. I think about simply moving on, but without this motivating me, who am I? Izumi said, will I just become my dad? The ringing of a phone interrupted my spiral. I take it out of my pocket and recognize Itsuka from the caller ID. I don't realize I'm not alone until then. Whatever happens, I have Itsuka. We first met a few years ago when I began training at her family's dojo. We recently started dating after we clicked. We are still close even though we don't see each other as much these days. We had intended to apply to the same UA Prep affiliated high school. We were prepared to work together to overcome this first significant obstacle in our quest to become heroes. I inhale deeply before picking up the phone. I say, hey, Itsuka, what's up? You don't usually call this early. Is something wrong? My girlfriend says, we need to talk, in a tentative and quiet voice. Are you okay? I inquire, concerned as her normally self-assured manner has completely vanished. Did something happen? My parents wanted to send me to live with my grandfather for a couple of years, Itsuka recalls. My dad can't do much more to train me nowadays and my grandfather offered to advance my training since I am planning to become a pro hero. I exclaim, that's great. Your grandfather never trains anyone personally anymore. This will be incredible for you. I am happy to hear it. Her words, there's something else, Izuku, I have to leave for years to learn from him. I won't be back until we are 18. That's okay, Itsuka, I reply. I will still have her in my life even though it might not be ideal because I won't be able to see her in person. We can just call each other and text. We can make this work. My grandfather demands total dedication from his students, says Itsuka. He doesn't want me to be distracted by anything else. He said that I can only truly learn when I devote all of myself to my training. That means I can't divide myself between his instruction and a relationship. I try to steer clear of the direction I want this conversation to go. We can just pick up where we left off when you get back, I say. It won't be that long before we are 18 and you are back in Musutafu. It'll be like we never missed a beat. Her words, you don't get it, Izuku. Her voice has a slight catch, which lets me know she's crying. I understand what she's trying to say at that point. He says that I have to choose. I can either learn from him or I can keep you in my life. I can't have both. If I go with him, I have to completely cut you out of my life from now on so that I can leave my past behind. Or, I can stay here and never fully realize my training. You chose him, I murmur. My heart's last remaining glimmer gradually started to dim and flicker. She declares, this is my best chance of becoming a hero, her voice trembling so much that I can tell she is crying now. If I don't do this, I am risking my dream on the hopes that I can become good enough. But if I do train with him, there will be nothing stopping me from reaching the top 10 after I graduate from UA. I ask, so, is this goodbye? It felt as though a cold had started to gnaw at my internal organs. I sensed the end was near, but there was nothing I could do to prevent it. Yes, she responds. I am sorry that I couldn't choose you. I just couldn't make myself abandon my dream. It's okay, Itsuka, I respond. I understand. Why sacrifice your dream for just some guy? She says, Izuku, you are not just some guy to me, in a painful voice as she finds it difficult to continue. She falters before completing, but I can tell what she was going to say. You are my best friend and the first person who supported me in trying to be a hero. The only thing preventing her is the likelihood that she will cry if she says it aloud. As I squeeze my phone so tightly that I'm shocked it doesn't break, I say, I love you too, Itsuka. Tears welling up in my own eyes. Goodbye. The beep of the call ending is hardly audible to me. I simply stand lost on the building's roof. Until someone says to me, oh well, I say that you are better off without her. I turn to see a man approaching me from the other side of the roof. He was wearing brown loafers, a white dress shirt with a red tie, and dress pants. His eyes were reddish-brown with a sharp edge, and he had curly black hair. He had the kind of smile that comes from a man who believes he is superior to you by nature. Hisashi Midoriya was my father. I mean, you can clearly do better, he responds. Was a goody two-shoes like her going to do all that much in the world even if she becomes a pro hero? No, she is far too naive to make a change for people like us. For those who are powerless to this twisted world we were born in. Shut up, I snarl at him. You don't know what you are talking about. He responds, yes, I do, his sly smile still intact. We are better, stronger, and smarter than most of the women in this world. However, since we are lowly men without quirks, we are looked down on like scum for trying to excel like we deserve to. Saying, I am not like you, I shake my head, I am nothing like you. He responds, of course you are, the proof is already here. I am the part of you that wants to take control. The part that hates being looked down on. That hates losing. That hates being disrespected. I am the part of you that is just like Hisashi. Hell, I even look the same because you know who you are. I mutter, I would sooner die than be like you, before I have a thought. Hey, don't go thinking anything stupid, comments Hisashi. I choose to ignore him and call my mother's number. I only have to wait a second for her to answer when I start the call. Hello, she says. Mom, I am not going to be home for dinner tonight, I declare. Don't worry, I am just going to be over at a friend's house. Just spend some mother-daughter time with Izumi. I know you guys click easier when I'm not around to mess up the dynamic. The words, okay, Izuku, she says, have fun with your friend. Hisashi asks, why do you continue to protect her? She didn't protect you when you were getting beaten. She just gave up and spent her days floating through life while you suffered through it. I chose to call Hitoshi and ignore his voice. As he picks up, Hitoshi asks, what's up? I need to ask you a favor, I respond. It's about Izumi. Does it have something to do with your fight earlier? He asks. You both got pretty heated from what I could hear. A bit, I acknowledge. She doesn't want me around anymore. It's a whole thing. So, since I have to give her some space, I need you to start watching out for her. Try to be subtle enough that she doesn't notice, but make sure that no one causes her any problems. Easy enough, Hitoshi answers. But why do you sound like you are not going to be around to tell me tomorrow? I am going to be going with Itsuka to her grandfather's dojo, I reply. Apparently, he decided I was good enough to train along with her. So, I am going to be heading off tonight. That's great, exclaims Hitoshi. Just make sure you don't give the old man a great-grandchild while you both are over there, lovebirds. I say, thanks, man, I know I can always count on you, Hitoshi, thanks for being my best bud. His words, always, Mido, can I drop by before they send you to the geriatric drill sergeant? Say goodbye before you drive off into the sunset? I say, sorry, man, I wanted to just spend one last night with my mom and sister before I won't see them for a while. His words, I get it, anyway, good luck. I am going to miss your dorky ass. I'll be seeing you, Hitoshi, I respond. He exclaims, later, and hangs up. I take a quick look at the phone before idly putting it aside. For a moment, I gaze out over the building's side and enjoy Musutafu from this elevated position. I believe I will miss this location. Before transforming into a copy of me, Hisashi asks, you are really going to take the coward's way out? You are going to throw away the dream that you worked so hard for? No, I am not, I tell my reflection. I am going to be the hero who takes down the monster before he can hurt anyone important to him, even if it costs him his life. With wild eyes, he yells, you can't let it all end like this, and tries to think of a counter-argument to stop me. I ask him, don't you remember what I said? I would rather die as the Izuku that Izumi could call her brother than live to be the same as my father. It's what a hero would do. Dying to protect his family. I guess I could be a hero after all. I fall over the edge as I take that final step. In my mind, everything happened so quickly that I was unable to comprehend them all, but I was able to recall the most significant ones. Izumi, age 3, grinning as she opens a Christmas gift. When I tripped and hurt myself as a child, my mother fussed over me. Itsuka sending me to the ground during a spar, then smiling at me from above. When I tell him something amusing, Hitoshi scoffs, but he can't hide the corner of his mouth that twitches. This wasn't such a bad life after all, was my final thought before it all ended. Hitoshi repeatedly strikes the heavy punching bag he was using for practice. He had been going for a long time, as evidenced by the perspiration running down his face and mating his hair, and he had no intention of stopping anytime soon. Between the thuds of his fists against the bag, he idly heard the squeaking sound of the basement door opening, but his attention was drawn to the swaying mass of padded leather. As his sister Hina calls down to him, Hitoshi, dinner's ready, Mom said to come up to eat. He continued to work at the bag, his fists stinging from the cumulative damage from training. I'll be up in a bit, he said. Just set out a plate. I just need a few more minutes. She calls out, hey, Hitoshi. What? He yells back up the stairs, frustrated by her insistence on keeping him company. His body can no longer be controlled by his mind, and he is immediately rooted in place. He simply stays in the same pose, shouting to the stairs while peering over his shoulder. He watches as his sister descends the stairs, and then she looks at him without amusement. Her words, "Slap yourself." When he hits his cheek with all of his strength, his hand automatically flies up and causes his head to rock to the side. This instantly reverses the Quirks' effects on him and restores his bodily control. Her eyes promise a sequel if he doesn't agree, and she asks with a charming smile, "Now are you ready to come and eat dinner?" He grunts, "Fine," and then reaches for a nearby towel to dab at the perspiration on his face. Before starting to remove the bandages from his fists, he tosses it back onto another piece of equipment. "I think I miss the days when you were too afraid to use your quirk. You could have just forced me to come instead of make me slap myself." "Yeah, but it was more fun to see you do it," she replies. "You know why I chose to make you do it yourself too. If I just made you do it, then it would be too easy to get my way all the time. Instead, I just use it to punish you for not listening to me. Very different." He complains, "Not to me," as he wraps his hands. "I prefer the one where I don't hit myself." "Then just listen to me," says his sister. "So, are you coming to eat or what?" Saying, yeah, he waves her away. "I am on my way. I am just going to put this stuff away before I wash my hands." Until he heard her voice again, he believed she had left. "You don't have to keep doing this, you know." He turns to see her at the bottom of the basement stairs, her hand on the railing, her back to him. "What are you talking about, Hina?" he asks, wanting to avoid a side talk because he is exhausted from the workout. "Don't have to do what?" She turned around and pointed to the exercise equipment strewn about the room. "All of this," she said, "trying to be a hero again. Working yourself to the bone on a daily basis even when the entrance exam for UA is tomorrow. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," he replies. He makes an effort to avoid staring at her because he finds it more difficult to defend himself when he sees the worry in her eyes. "You know why?" "It won't bring him back," she declares. "I know he was your best friend. I miss him too. But you can't just spend your life chasing someone else's dream. That's no way to live. He wouldn't want that." With his fists clenched so tightly that his fingernails start digging into his palms, he asks, "You don't think I know that? You don't think I remember how happy he was that I chose to do something else besides becoming a hero? That I could find something to dream of besides the fucking mountain of suffering it would take to become a male hero? I know what he would want, but I can't just stop." "Hitoshi," Hina says, observing her brother's obvious suffering, "you can let go. Izuku would want you to." When Hitoshi says, "If I do, then there is nothing left of him, all those plans, those dreams, that work. All of it will have just disappeared without anything to show for it. He will just disappear. I can't just give up because this is the only way that I know to keep a piece of him alive." Hina says, "He wouldn't want you burning yourself out to keep his flame alive," and then she approaches her brother and gives him a hug. "He wouldn't want his ghost haunting you." "I know," he murmurs. "I just want to see if I can make it through tomorrow. Then, I will be able to let him rest in peace knowing I took it as far as I could." Hina says, "That's all I wanted to hear," and then she looks at him and breaks off the embrace. Last one out of the basement gets to serve last. She gives a textbook perfect 2-knuckleball tap after making this declaration. After such a heartfelt moment, Hitoshi wheezes in shock at the sudden attack. But given his sister, he ought to have anticipated it. When Hitoshi eventually starts to pursue her, Hina simply dashes to the stairs and sticks out her tongue at him before sprinting up. She breaks Hitoshi out of his brooding, if only briefly, and then smiles triumphantly. Izumi lay on the bed and gazed at the tiny room's walls. Her surroundings are illuminated with a tomb-like eeriness by the small amount of light that managed to get through the gaps in the blinds. However, that's the only name this room can have these days. Her gaze wanders across the posters of heroes striking famous poses and the statues towering over the shelves. Their features were illuminated by the shadows, giving them a menacing and mocking appearance. They seemed to be criticizing her for being present, as if her presence tainted something that was sacred. She had no idea why she kept returning to this room. She was not worthy of being here. Why should she be in her brother's room? After all, she should be glad he's gone, shouldn't she? It was she who severed her relationship with him. It ought to have fulfilled all of her dreams. So why does his face keep appearing in her dreams? Seeing him the instant she turned her back on him had become practically a nightly occurrence. As he reached out to the sister he believed he could always rely on, his eyes were filled with pain and incredulity. But her dream self would leave knowing that she had broken his heart, just as she had turned away so long ago. She likely returns because it's the only place where her dreams don't come true, It seems as though he is going to put his arms around her and console her as she lies on his bed, as if she could see him again by simply turning around. The sight of the urn on the desk always destroys the belief. When they received it, neither she nor her mother knew what to do with it. Instead of putting it on display in the living room or somewhere else, they simply left it in here so that he could be content in his own room. Not in sight, but close enough. Every time her mother cleaned the room, she was grateful that she didn't wash his sheets. That meant that even after all these years, they still had a hint of his scent. Every time, her mother would make sure that everything else was clean and that there was not a trace of dust. She seemed to believe that Izuku would return at any moment and would require his room to be prepared and fresh. Izumi, however, was wiser. Every time she dusted the urn, her mother would slow down because it made her confront reality, even if only briefly. One could argue that the only bright spot in Izuku's passing was that it appeared to finally shake her mother out of the haze she had been living in. If only her brother could have witnessed it. Her mother appeared to give her remaining child her whole attention rather than stumbling through life as if she were already half dead. Izumi found it almost suffocating at times, but it kept her more active in the world. Specifically, it made her mother much less receptive to the notion that she would become a hero. Only after months of covert training did she feel secure enough to speak with her about the subject. Even so, she needed Tashi's assistance to persuade her. The only reason Inko ever let go of her protectiveness toward her daughter was because Izumi had awakened her quirk as a late bloomer and could now become a hero rather safely. She was terrified of losing Izumi as well and being abandoned since she was the only remaining member of her family. Izumi simply shook her head, trying to get her mind off tomorrow's entrance exam. It felt wrong to be going alone, even though she had trained enough to know she could pass. She was still unsure of how to react to the thought that Izuku wouldn't be there, making every effort to gain admission to UA. She simply closed her eyes and tightened the hoodie she was wearing. Izuku used to wear one of his vintage, limited edition All Might sweatshirts outside of school. She would always put it on to feel better whenever she thought she would be overwhelmed by everything. She detested herself for having such feelings. After all, Izuku shouldn't be able to console her. Not when he was gone because of her. Izumi eventually fell asleep on Izuku's bed after her breathing evened out. The tears soaking the pillow were the only indication that the sleep was not restful. Izuku smiled and pointed to himself. "I bet I'm going to get higher in the entrance cam when we finally take it, Itsuka," he said. "We all know you can't compete with all of this." She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, really? We will just have to see in a couple years, won't we? No matter what, I will still beat you to the top 10. Izuku nodded wisely and said, bold word coming from Ms. Man hands, until Itsuka tackled him. As she attempted to place him in a headlock, she yelled, "I told you not to call me that." Izuku merely chuckled before drawing his hidden weapon and starting to tickle her tender spots. Itsuka tried to stop Izuku's torrent of tickling, but she gave up trying to choke him out right away. She was left cackling and writhing on the ground, though, as she was unable to match his attack. "Stop it!" Itsuka screamed, her lungs gasping for air after a prolonged period of laughter. "If you don't stop, I'm going to pee." When his victim finally shows mercy, Izuku decides to give her a hug from behind while she catches her breath. She gives him a shady glance after giving him a feeble elbow to the side. "You can't just cheat to get out of my payback," she pouts and murmurs. He says, "I will when you stop being so adorable to mess with," and then he gives her a cheek kiss. "I'll still do it all through UA and long into our futures as heroes. That's a promise." In order to keep Izuku from seeing the blush and smile that had appeared on her face, Itsuka turned her head to the side. She didn't think that was too bad. She can no longer feel Izuku, so she slowly opens her eyes and reaches for him. Reality rushed back into her head when all she could feel was the cool bed. For the brief moments when she first opened her eyes in the morning, she would always forget he was no longer with her. The highlight of her day was that she lived in a world where Izuku was still alive for those brief moments. It also occurred several times a day. Sometimes she would see something that caught her attention or think of something amusing, and then she would momentarily forget. Every time she turned to tell him or took out her phone to give him a call, it would hit her as hard. No one was standing there, and no one was picking up the phone. When she killed him, why would there be? Reaching to her nightstand, Itsuka took her phone. She simply stared at the lock screen while pressing the power button. It was a picture taken just before she ruined everything, after she had won a local martial arts competition. She recalled the thrill of being the champion and winning the last battle, but that was nothing compared to the sensation of Izuku running up to her and giving her a spinning hug while congratulating her. She pulled him into a kiss when he finally failed to live up to her expectations. When the only thing that mattered was the person in her arms, it seemed as though the world vanished. That moment, which seemed to last forever to her, was captured in the picture. Why, then, did she depart? She knew she was making a mistake as soon as she called, no matter how hard she tried to convince herself otherwise. She was aware of the sacrifices she was making for a mere expediency. Without her grandfather, she is certain that she could have developed the strength necessary for UA. Even if it meant giving up what should have been her top priority, she only wanted the simplest solution. A part of her knew why she had done it. She was merely self-centered. She believed that there would be no consequences if she threw Izuku away and left for years. That he would be thrilled to continue where they left off and would be waiting for her when she returned after all that time. She secretly thought that as soon as she returned, everything would return to normal. How foolish could she be? Look what happened when she abandoned her boyfriend. Months passed before she even learned of his passing. It must have happened immediately after she called, based on what they said, immediately following her heartbreak. Itsuka simply puts her phone back and suppresses her guilt before it can start to consume her. She recalls the pledge he made to her as she curls up under the covers. Liar, she whispered in her room's darkness. She couldn't tell if she was referring to Izuku or herself as she fell asleep. In an effort to fit in some last-minute studying before the UA entrance exam, Momo has fallen face first onto the textbook she was reading. Since she chose to take the public exam rather than the recommendation exam that her parents had planned, she had been anxious. She therefore wished to ensure that she was as ready as possible. This caused her to disregard any recommendations for a restful night's sleep and faint in the middle of a chapter on using graphed equations to calculate derivatives. The man simply rubbed his face through the mask and shook his head. As the heiress finally ran out of energy, he looked past his fingers to see her drooling a little in her sleep. He chuckled and pushed against her shoulder before speaking in a whisper. He said, "Princess, you need to get in bed. You don't want to be too tired for your test tomorrow." She murmurs, "Need, study," and then curls up on her paper pillow. With a simple sigh, he lifted the girl into his arms, allowing her to instinctively wrap her arms around his neck and rest against his chest. He carried her from her desk to her bed while holding her in a princess carry. He tucked her in after slipping her under the covers. She let out a sigh of satisfaction as she eased herself into her dream after wrapping herself in her sheets with an absurdly high thread count. The only visible indication of the man's expression was the slight crinkling of the skin around his eyes, and he simply grinned beneath the mask. Before hanging the items his charge had forgotten, he turns off the light on her nightstand. Her books were closed and arranged according to her system of subjects and complexity on her well-organized bookshelves. She gathered the remains of her daytime clothes in the dirty clothes hamper and carried it to the laundry room. He gave the girl another quick glance before softly closing the door behind him in a barely audible whisper. Even at this late hour, the house was still occupied by a large number of servants. He nodded in return as they bowed to him in regard to his position. The man eventually made his way to the kitchens after navigating the sometimes touristically narrow hallways. The chefs bowed and left for the evening when they saw him arrive. When Momo was eating a bento for lunch, it was customary for the man to prepare the meal himself, even though they prepared the meals for her while she was living at the manor. With practiced ease, he made the meal. In addition to accounting for the high level of quirk use that would take place during tomorrow's entrance exam, it was designed to provide the best nutrition possible for a developing woman of her age, height, weight, and body type. In order to keep her energy levels stable and avoid depleting her lipid stores too much, it contained a lot of carbohydrates. When it was cooked, he stuffed it into her enormous bento box, which had 4 layers. It would have been assumed by any amateur who had never seen how much Momo could eat that it was for a small family. When he was done preparing lunch, he put it in the refrigerator for the evening and left the kitchen. It was inevitable that his route would lead him into the garden that surrounded the house. In a more laid-back area of the garden, he paused at a wooden bench near a water fountain. He marveled at the shimmering silver glow of the water as it raced through the air in the moonlight. He reached into an inner pocket of his jacket and took out a small package. He puts the pack back in his pocket, takes out one of the cigarettes, and then reaches for his lighter. Momo had given him a golden lighter as an anniversary present for being her chaperone for a full year, and he stared at it. He knew the little girl hated his smoking habits, but it had surprised him to see how thoughtful she was. Placing the cigarette between his lips, he lowered his mask. He flipped the lighter open, hit the striker to light it, and held the bright orange flame against the cigarette tip until it caught. He closed the lighter with a flick of his wrist, smothering the flame, and then took a long drag from the cancer stick. After a long day, the way it burned always helped him to relax. He could agree with Momo that the smoke's taste and odor were repulsive, but he had no intention of breaking the habit anytime soon. He watched as the red cherry of the end slowly moved up the length of the cigarette, turning everything in its path to ash as he took puffs. Before continuing to indulge in the guilty pleasure, he tapped the cigarette to the side to remove the ash. It was the final thing he did before going to bed every night. He allowed his mind to wander to the entrance exam that was scheduled for the morning. He hadn't considered UA in a long time. As a result, a thought occurred to him that made his scarred face smile. Momo was always annoyed by the same smile because it always came before some slightly crazy thought that only he could understand. Knowing that it would be picked up by the landscaping crew in the morning, he stubbed out his cigarette in the gravel in front of the bench. He had only one thought as he pulled up the mask and started walking back to the manor. He laughed and said, "There's no point letting Momo have all the fun, now is there?" The first part of the entrance exam day was uneventful. Although it was more difficult than most colleges would anticipate from recent high school graduates, the academic test was simple. After lunch break, this finally culminated in the briefing prior to the combat section of the test. There were only 2 boys and lots of optimistic girls in the auditorium. One chose not to care, while the other dressed in bulky clothing to blend in with the crowd and conceal his shape. As a result, he was sitting comfortably with his feet resting on the table and his head, which was covered in spiky purple hair, resting in his interlocked hands. Present Mike, the heroine who is well known for her radio show and for stopping villains with her strong voice quirk, emerges onto the stage in the middle of the auditorium. She yelled, "Can I get a hey?" to a silence that was only broken by the boy with purple hair applauding. She said to herself, "Okay, one more than usual. Anyway, let's get on with explaining the next test. You all will be divided and each group will be guided to one of UA's mock cities. You will face 3 kinds of robot adversaries which you will be tasked with neutralizing in a 10-minute mock city exam. There are 1-pointers, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers. You will get the corresponding number of points added to your score whenever you incapacitate one of them. Be careful though. They are progressively stronger, so make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew. Any questions?" A blue-haired girl with glasses says, "I have 2 questions," as she gets to her feet. Firstly, there appears to be 4 robots in the information packets we were given. If this is an error, it is a grievous insult to the standards of UA. Also, there is a man in here who is disrupting other participants' attention. I believe he should be escorted out as he does not belong here. The purple-haired man asks, "Are you talking about me?" even though a green-haired girl nudges him in the side and tells him to stop. "I am surprised you noticed me. I thought you would be too distracted with that massive stick shoved up your ass." The girl next to her, who has short blonde hair, bursts out laughing as the green-haired girl lets out a long, painful sigh and shrinks into her seat. "Cool your jets, little listener," says Present Mike. The extra robot is called the 0-pointer. It is primarily a gimmick opponent that is meant to simulate an opponent that is too powerful to defeat. It is intended to act as a barrier that you have to avoid in the later part of the test, which is also why it gives no points for destruction. We look for the exceptional in each year's participants, regardless of gender, she clarified. As for the boy, it is UA policy to allow men to try out for the hero program since we also allow quirkless women to try out as well. But if he keeps making offensive remarks, I won't think twice about kicking him out. "I'll be good," he exclaims, grinning. Present Mike says, "Anyway, it's time for you all to head out to your test sites. As always, make sure to go plus ultra. Dash dash." In contrast to the women around him, the man simply yawned because he didn't get as much sleep as he wanted last night because he had to make a last-minute grocery run before bed, which he had forgotten until the last minute, but he knew it was the right call to take care of. The man stood in the group of examinees as they waited for the test to begin. The trip there had been uneventful, but the tension in the air was palpable as everyone realized this was their only chance to realize their dreams. He glanced at the anxious girls and laughed to himself. Most of them would probably fail the test and would have to try for another school or give up their heroic ambitions. If he was being honest, he didn't really care all that much, mainly out of idle curiosity about how strong their convictions really were and how far they were willing to go for their dreams. He sincerely doubted that the great majority would do anything more than admit defeat and go on with their lives, since, after all, very few of the applicants were doing anything but acting like heroes. Before the prep time expired, he just stretched idly for a few minutes. And, start, Present Mike yells as she watches the test areas from her perch atop the tower. To the astonishment of the other participants, the man dashed forward right away, and Present Mike didn't say anything more until he had passed through the gate. "What are you waiting for? It's a waste of time," she said. "Hurry up." At last, the others start moving and attempt to overtake the man who has an advantage over the pack. A three-pointer attempted to fire a couple rockets at him, but he had already fled before closing the distance, and a quick slash through a weak spot in the neck sent it collapsing along with a quick spray of sparks. He had been making good use of his time while the others were distracted, pulling a black dagger from his clothing and starting to stab and slash into the weak points of any robot that stumbled across him. This was surprisingly fun to him, which may be why Momo enjoyed her video games so much when she wasn't studying. A two-pointer rushes at him from behind, only to get a new hole in its head as the man threw his dagger like a throwing knife straight through the lens in its eye. He ripped the dagger out before continuing on his way, wondering absently what the high score was as he tore his way through another series of robotic opponents. He occasionally slowed down when he saw examinees struggling against a robot. He destroyed a three-pointer that nearly ambushed a pair of levitating clothes until he sent it to the scrap heap. Another one-pointer attempted to take advantage of a metal girl carrying an injured participant out of immediate danger before its head found itself separated from its body by a precise attack. The most he ever bothered to give to the examinees he helped out was a quick nod of acknowledgement before continuing on his way. These girls could very well become Momo's classmates, so there was no need to be too harsh with them just yet. He would have years to find flaws. What sort of opportunities are we currently considering? Some of these kids seem promising, a teacher inquires. Another teacher remarked, I like Greenie with the lighting. She's doing a good job of staying mobile, spotting her opponents, and eliminating them quickly. The fact that she looks out for the other examinees is even better. You can't ignore the explosion girl either, another person said, adding that she is slightly outperforming the lightning girl in terms of villain points, but that's also because she is essentially ignoring the other characters. However, that can be refined a little bit in the classroom. I'm surprised to have had a guy in this stage of the exam, says the present Mike. I can't remember any men trying for the hero course in years, even if it isn't against the rules. Another voice says, there are two men taking the exam. The teachers all turned to look at the animalistic woman who was watching the screens while holding a cup of tea. Her dark black eyes easily followed the action in several different locations while she took another sip of her favorite beverage. The second is where? A teacher asks, trying to find the lone other man as their gaze moves across the wall of screens. He is easily the most skilled in terms of mundane combat amongst the prospects, though his fellow male examinee is closely behind him. You can admire his skilled knife work in City F, the woman replied, her lips pulling into a small grin that almost seemed to flash the briefest glimpse of her sharp teeth. The man was blessed with a bulky black coat with a dark hood, a black cloth mask covering his face from his nose down, and a heavily tinted pair of sunglasses. He proceeded through a group of two-pointers and one-pointers without breaking stride, his knife flashing out and burying itself into each machine before ripping it out and plunging it into another. His strength is also very impressive. To be as successful as he is, most people would have to rely on a quirk. He is currently in the lead in terms of points thus far. Are you serious? He might be better than the average guy trying the test, but he doesn't seem like he could compete against some of the powerful quirks of the girls, one of the women queries. She acknowledged, he might lose in a straight fight, but his skills seem to be far more developed than many of the other applicants. He is far more adept than the others at finding targets and navigating the purposefully narrow passageways. In an instant after spotting the robot's weaknesses, he seems to be able to isolate them while also employing the bare minimum to get rid of them and keep moving forward. Because of his extraordinary situational awareness and ability to use their superior numbers against them, he is unfazed by many adversaries. By avoiding their path and keeping his presence hidden, he can also eliminate threats from his fellow examinees. However, the best part isn't even taken into account. What's the best aspect? A weary voice asks, obviously irritated by the subject at hand. She grinned and remarked, he's hardly even trying. He sees this as a fun game to play as he tears his way through any obstacle. It's similar to watching a champion marathon runner compete in a neighborhood fun run or a cat play with a mouse. They could easily control the situation and put an end to it fast, but instead they prefer to take pleasure in the simplicity of winning with little effort. I understand. Playing with those Rubik's Cube toys from before Quirks is always fun. I could quickly figure it out. But playing around with it during a break is more enjoyable. Are you implying that a man is participating in a game with disabilities while presenting this year's top applicants? I don't want him, the woman moaned as she asked. For all I care, put him in 1A with kin. Since you removed my expulsion rights, all I want is a basic year where I can teach a class in peace. I've been dealing with whatever he is for 3 years without getting enough sleep. The animalistic woman laughs affectionately and says, "Oh, Aizawa, I wouldn't dream of it." The woman, who was still coping with the irate sponsors after an entire class was expelled on their first day last year, didn't let the teacher get away with it, but the rest of the viewing booth didn't notice the sly smile. It was time for someone else to be inconvenienced. The weary woman's mind raced with possible interpretations, and she couldn't be certain, but she sensed that something negative was in store for her. This sent a shiver down her spine. The woman laughed and said, "Oh, look at the time. Let's see how they all handle the zero-pointer." Dash dash. A huge robot rose above the artificial city's streets, causing the ground to rumble. Many of the examinees froze in terror at the zero-pointer as its shadow loomed over them, but their paralysis was quickly overcome by adrenaline-induced flight, which sent them fleeing as the sounds of screaming and people pushing each other aside filled the air. Good riddance. UA doesn't need a bunch of cowardly fools clogging its halls. The man simply laughed as he watched the hero applicants quickly forget their ideals and revert to the impetuous nature so typical of the species. They started looking out for themselves even at the expense of those around them. He saw a brunette girl fall to the ground after a large chunk of concrete landed on her leg with an audible snap. She cried out in pain, but her voice was drowned out in the panic-filled din produced by everyone else, and her pleas for help went unheard. The automaton's bulky design caused it to carve into the nearby buildings on either side of the street as it moved forward after the crowd, with some of them suffering new injuries in the process. "Knockout," he whispers, pulling the sleeve of his jacket up to reveal a silver watch before lifting his wrist to his mouth as the throng of applicants finally starts to thin out. Once the surveillance was removed, an invisible wave of energy erupts from the watch and jumbles all of the nearby cameras. The watch shook and then started to move, revealing tiny metallic plates covering an insectoid creature that looked up at him with its tiny black eyes and gave a chirping chirp to indicate its success. The insect returned to its camouflaged watch form after he rubbed its head with his finger and flipped his dagger into the air before catching it in a reverse grip. A green and black flame ignites along the length of the blade before he cuts into the pavement next to him. A long line of fire slashes through the street's asphalt until it stops and appears to stretch apart, then it tears open to reveal a hole of green fire before the man yells, "Ouroboros, Gamma. Let's get started." A large white snake with crimson eyes emerges from the rift and slithers to stand at attention to his left side, followed shortly after by a dark green frog that leaps to its position behind him. Both creatures are much larger than any of their conventional counterparts in the animal kingdom, with the exception of the occasional non-human animal's quirk emergence, but they were distinguished by a hint of the demonic in their forms. With a pair of back-facing horns, a secondary set of eyes behind its primary set, and red plating on its underside, the snake looked like a hybrid of a serpentine and a draconic, with the worst of both worlds. The frog's neon green eyes complemented the bright green glow emanating from its throat flesh, which gave its body a poisonous glow that gave it an unnatural and menacing appearance. "Send it." As the rift closed behind the two creatures, the man gave an order. The frog grunted and then spat out a body wrapped in a white cloth sheet, which was the grocery he had to pick up the night before. He thought the trip to the morgue was worthwhile because it was always preferable to work with something fresh rather than using whatever supplies he had on hand at the time. The bound cadaver flew over him, and his knife flashed out to stab the corpse before it could finish passing. The green flame of the knife seemed to flow into the corpse's body, causing it to undergo a rapid transformation that allowed it to grow beyond the size of its binding and reach a height of 12 feet in the time it took to crash into the ground. Its flesh had shifted and changed to become a red-skinned humanoid with armor plating covering its mouth and pitch-black eyes. It rolled onto its feet, growing taller with each step as it charged the mechanical titan. The metal screamed and moaned in protest as the machine attempted to fend off its new foe with its own strength. It turned into a battle between a massive demonic warrior and a metal marvel that many people would never be able to defeat. The former cadaver had already matched its height and slammed into the zero-pointer with a comparable mass. Its bones started to strain and crack under the constant force of its opposition, its skin slowly tore open from the stress, and its muscle fibers began to snap as they were unable to defeat the rival giant. The two soon found themselves in a deadlock before the undead giant started to give way. The man watched and said, "HMMPH, I need to work on creating bigger monsters more. If I had time, I could do one decently, but a last-minute job isn't good enough. In order to get a better idea of how to improve, I should make Momo study the biology of large organisms with me. Gamma, Clear the rubble on the girl and evacuate her, the frog is told. Ouroboros, you get to finish it off. The frog and snake respond with a ribbit and hiss before charging ahead. Gamma shoots its tongue out to cling to the debris, then whips it off the girl's leg, sending the debris crashing into another building before grabbing her with another shot of its tongue and holding her in its mouth for protection. The red giant builds up for one final push and sends the robot away just before its legs collapse from the cumulative damage. The snake slithers to the point where the demonic creature is barely holding the robot in a losing stalemate, then uses its outstretched leg as a ramp to climb up and onto its back, allowing it to traverse over the robot's shoulder and wrap itself around its neck. The man simply lifts his hand when the metal titan pulls away from the shove, seeing that the snake has finished coiling around the neck and biting onto its own tail. He snaps his fingers, a grin concealed behind his mask, and causes Ouroboros to explode in a bright blast that instantly decapitates the machine, sending the enormous head crashing to the ground with a boom that reverberates throughout the street before the body collapses with a thunderous follow-up. The only change to the snake after the explosion is that the red plates on its underbelly have been replaced with thinner black sections, and a hiss comes from behind the body before Ouroboros slithers over the metal form and returns to the man. When he looks back at the red giant, he sees it softening and transforming into a puddle of organic mush. Nice job, he says as Gamma lets the girl out of its mouth and places her back on the ground with his tongue. I guess that's what I get for such a quick creation. Gamma and Ouroboros hop and slither inside before the man yells, "Spore!" as he ignites his dagger again and slashes into the ground, creating a rift beneath the deteriorating giant that grows to the point where the body falls inside. A last-minute memory wipe. Grasping the edge of the rift, a hand made of thick green and brown vines pulls its upper half out of the portal and above the road. Its head is a closed flower bulb, and once it has risen, the bulb spreads open to reveal a white flower with 6 pollen stalks reaching into the air. As it unfolds, a flood of yellow is released and spreads throughout the surroundings. The man could see the injured girl's eyes widening as her memory became fuzzy and her focus on reality became blurry. This would only lead them to rewrite what happened into the most plausible version of events that excluded him. It wasn't true mental manipulation because it only led them to confuse a dream for reality and vice versa. Worth it, he said simply, looking around at the chaos and devastation around him with a chuckle as he tucked his dagger in his clothing. Spore closed its bud after the pollen wave had passed, then sank back into the rift before it sealed shut. Momo had chosen to study even more the night before the test in order to determine precisely which questions she might have missed, and as he had anticipated given her experiment with sleep deprivation the night before and the fatigue from the day before, her caretaker discovered her drooling in a textbook again, this time in a literature book rather than a calculus one. He heard faint classical music coming from the study as he was leaving her bedroom after tucking the heiress in. None of the workers should be in that part of the manor at this time, and they never turn on music when they are. His footsteps stopped as he stalked closer to the source of the noise, pulling his dagger from its sheath at the small of his back with one hand while drawing a .45 caliber pistol from the holster inside his jacket with the other. He returns the dagger and his sidearm to their proper positions as he resumes his usual stride into the study, and soon he is close enough to the room to hear the sound of humming in time with the music, which makes him visibly relax. He turned into the room and saw the occupant sitting in front of a roaring fire, staring into the flames with a glass of brandy in his hand, swirling it idly as his eyes traced the twisting blaze and his ears took in the sweet serenade of an ancient orchestra, his golden blonde hair seeming to glint in the firelight as the shadows played on his timeless face. The intruder was wearing a black suit jacket draped over the antique armchair he was sitting in, a sheathed sword resting against the chair, and one of his bright blue eyes flashed over to the man in black, his lips pulling into a grin that gleamed in the fire's light. "Alucard, what are you doing here?" the black-clad man asked. "For nostalgia's sake, is it not possible for me to visit my account manager's homes?" "You must thank the young Miss Yaoyorozu on my behalf," Alucard asks, before taking a sip of his drink. Even though she doesn't drink, she maintains a beautifully stocked liquor cabinet. The man retorted, "This property was not actively occupied until a few months ago. If you wanted to visit her parents, you are not even in the correct city. Momo alone did it even then. Tell me why you are really here, then." Alucard acknowledged, "As usual, you are correct. I am not here to talk business with the family about keeping my Japanese assets. I'm here to speak with you." "Why, you haven't contacted me in more than a year," he inquires. "What was different?" "You did," Alucard replied, "at least you made a difference." A man breaking records for his highest cumulative score on the UA entrance exam is not something that happens very often. That attracts a lot of attention. I assumed you wished to remain undetected. It was a moment of impulse, he dismisses, adding, I wanted to see how difficult the legendary exam truly was. I hope it was worth it, Alucard says, adding that the Belmont will be drawn in after all this time you were able to stay under the radar. They were surprised to discover you hiding under my associate's employment. You should have participated under a different name if you were just trying to satisfy your whims. When someone made headlines with their family name and the name of one of the men who assisted my father in nearly destroying humanity, they would never ignore them. Although I found it amusing when you selected it, Isaac Belmont, it is not the right title to show off so sloppily. He answers, I thought you would understand why I chose that name when I wanted to start over, Alucard. I want to let the past go and move on. It's funny that you chose those names in particular, Alucard remarks. Isaac, the sinner who used his magic to rescue those he plucked from the depths of hell in the hopes of redeeming his own soul. A man who chose to believe in second chances after witnessing the worst in people as a child. For better or worse, the Belmont family has left their mark on you. They still act as a defense against the darkness, though. You don't seem to be as prepared to move on as you say you are. Stop with your riddles, says the individual. If you want to say something, quit hinting at it and speak your mind. Is it impossible for you to let go of your former life? Why else go to the test? Alucard asks, and the man remains motionless for a moment before providing the immortal with the necessary response. The people you left behind were the ones you wanted to see. Izuku Midoriya, isn't that correct? I don't think I could go back to being Izuku after everything that has happened, I say, staring into the flames for a moment as I consider my response. Izuku died by his own hand and those of the Belmonts. It would be best if he remained dead. Isn't his desire to remain dead the true question? Would you be able to move past the ghosts of your former life without reaching out again? Asks Alucard. I don't know, I acknowledge, I'm not sure what I would do. Rather, I decide to live my life as I see fit up until that point. Whatever I choose, I don't want to have any regrets. Alucard laughs and explains, I can see why my father was always so interested in you Forgemasters. You never cease to amaze. Say hello to your mother as well, I tell him. He smiles and says, of course, before standing up, placing his glass on a nearby shelf, putting his sword in a loop on his belt, and saying, I better be off then. Avoid going overboard at that hero school. When they see you as a kaiju factory, I don't want you killed. I dismiss the worry, saying, I can handle whatever comes my way, if I need to, I'll just build some backup. Confidence even when faced with fighting the whole world, Alucard remarks, grinning slightly. Maybe you really do deserve the Belmont name after all. The half-vampire whispers and runs off to wherever he's going, leaving me to stare into the fire until it's nothing but embers. What's going on with the readings we were given for the test? We detected kaiju in the mock city for a moment before they seemed to vanish, Aizawa asks the women in the room as they go through the recordings from the area where the zero-pointer appeared. The fact that the zero-pointers are missing a head when there were no applicants who ought to have been able to do that is the only evidence for this. The frustrating thing is that it applied to the recording devices in the robots as well, Power Loader states, typing into the computer without finding anything more. All of the cameras in the area shorted out right before they appeared, she adds. Because it couldn't store any information about what got it, the zero-pointer's hard drive was worthless. 3 of them had fortitude ratings of 5.2, 4.1, and 4.8. These readings are worrying too, says Ectoplasm. If it weren't for the 6.5 that was recorded for a minute, those would be quite concerning. Why would the others simply vanish while that rating seemed to drop to nothing after a minute? Who knows? All we can do is wait and see what happens after we reach out for some help, Nezumi chuckles. We should be able to get some assistance since we are getting a couple students who trained in the defense force. They would want to help us figure it out. Nezumi glanced at the picture on her phone as the other women discussed their situation among themselves. To make sure no one else found out, she had to hack into an orbital surveillance satellite and erase all of its data, but she saved the one picture before doing so. A man brandished a dagger that was blazing with green flames. It has been a long time, she reflected. A Forgemaster is born again at last. Momo's perspective. Momo was still trying to control her excitement at getting into UA as she sat elegantly in her seat. She never imagined that her long-held dream would actually come true. Not until she met Isaac, anyway. Not to mention that her caretaker irritated her every single day. Even though he made her angry every hour, he had accelerated her growth beyond anything she could have imagined on her own. She learned more about her own quirk from his insights than from years of tutors, and his intense training increased her ability to use her quirk tenfold. She had gotten to the point where she could take the public entrance exam and place in the top 5 after just a year together. If only Isaac hadn't insisted on making fun of her for losing the top spot. How was it her fault that some applicants were likely able to destroy robots with ease and move mountains with their peculiarities? Momo was aware that it was merely a handy pretext for the man to punish her. As she spoke to another girl in her homeroom class, she suppressed her grimace and maintained a calm smile on her face, refusing to let him win by annoying her. Since he was back at the manor and far away from here, there was no reason to give her stupid caretaker any more thought. Now that the class was full and their teacher was on her way, she could finally unwind, if only a little. The fact that the seat to her right was empty was the only thing that perplexed her. It's likely that the student will be late today. This is the most crucial day to arrive early of all. All Momo could hope was that the poor girl wouldn't receive too severe punishment on the first day. Isaac placed a bento box on top of her desk and said, "You forgot your lunch at home, Momo," from behind her. "Good thing I was dropping by." Momo started to say, "Thanks," before she realized who had just said it. She let out a cry of surprise and set off grenades all over the classroom, spraying knockout gas and exploding with loud bangs of deafening sound and bursts of blinding light. She was aware that it wouldn't save her, though. Point of view of Isaac Belmont. As I sit on Momo's back and relish my well-earned ride, I laugh to myself. I sat on her back as extra weight while she struggled through her punishment, which consisted of a series of push-ups. She made the error of lowering her defenses because she believed she was safe. Ah, what a dumb girl. I'm not safe anywhere. Telling Momo, "Stop shaking so much, I am trying to read here and it is a lot harder when the book keeps moving around. If I have to read the same paragraph one more time, you are going to do another 30 push-ups." She squeaks, "Got it," under the strain of the moment. A voice asks, "What is going on here?" It turned out to be our teacher, a woman with a gas mask covering her face, dark clothing, and a loose gray scarf. She was awake while everyone else was still unconscious because of that. "Oh, I am just giving Momo here some extra training since she was slipping recently," I respond with a smile. "You wouldn't believe how much people slack off once they think they are in the clear. The princess here had the misconception she didn't have to do my training since she was at UA now. The truth is that she will have to do all of my training and whatever sadistic stuff you guys come up with. Suffering is good for the soul and all that." The teacher asks, "Are you serious?" Even through the tinted glass of her gas mask, her deadpan was evident. "Of course," is my response. What is better for forging heroes than body-breaking, fear-inducing, trauma-level training that will result in deeply rooted fears for the rest of their adult lives? You are not pushing them hard enough if they won't have a panic attack at the mere thought of your training. It is the only responsible way to teach. She seems to give me a long look before answering. She exclaims, finally, with a great deal of vindication, "Another person understands what I have been saying. All of the other teachers constantly harp on me for being too hard on the kids. Am I really supposed to take it easy on them? They are training to be heroes for God's sake. It's better if they are laying in their beds with nightmares than laying in a morgue," I say with a smile. "Right," she queries. "What's your go-to punishment when someone doesn't meet your standards?" Just as I was getting excited about my personal pastime of traumatizing Momo, I received a call. I glance at the screen and then let out a frustrated moan. The fun will have to wait, I suppose. I tell the teacher, "I need to take this phone call real quick, it's my boss." She only calls if it is urgent. "Might as well," she says. When she prods one of the unconscious pupils, she hears snoring in return. I doubt they are waking up anytime soon. I say, "Thanks," and then I leave the classroom to take the call. "What's wrong, Mrs. Yaoyorozu?" "I am in the middle of class. Momo's father and I need to take a last-minute business trip across Europe during the school year," replies Mrs. Yaoyorozu. "As such, we cannot take along any extra passengers." "What are you talking about?" I inquire. "What happened to it being okay whenever? You said it was fine for the school year. Momo and I are busy with classes. We don't exactly have a ton of free time ourselves, let alone watching 2 others. I cleared it with the principal, Nizumi, a few days ago," she continues. They should already be there. A young girl exclaims, "Daddy!" Just before I feel something smash into my leg. When I look down, I see a single tiny horn and a mop of silvery white hair covering adorable red eyes that are staring up at me. Her cuteness factor was almost catatonic because she was wearing a miniature version of the UA girl's uniform. This was Eri, a girl who was now my fictitious daughter. A bigger girl yells, "Isaac!" Just before another mass slams into my shoulder, I turn to see a blonde girl with a happy fanged smile and her hair in two unkempt buns. When I was near her, her eyes glowed with a special combination of happiness and hunger. She was also wearing a very well-fitting UA uniform. This was Himiko, the girl who was now Momo's maid. Even though I adore these two very much, this adds a great deal of complexity to my life. Well, whatever. In any case, my life was becoming too simple. God must have wanted to add a little spice. When the class finally woke up, they were obviously taken aback by what they saw. Eri drank a juice pouch that Aizawa had in her magic scarf of surprises while Momo and Himiko played with her. However, over coffee cups, I was discussing teaching methods with the teacher herself. I explain, "That's when you inject them with the paralytic toxin and dump them in the pool, and then use my mask to take a sip of my coffee." As one does, you know. Not only do they have to unlock the handcuffs binding their hands and feet before they drown, but they have to do it while losing all sensation and ability to move. If they drown, just do some CPR and administer the antidote. Once they are fine, just repeat until they get it down. Or until it starts taking a little too long to revive them. If that happens, you can just wait until tomorrow before you start over. When the students saw their teacher listening with a joyful smile on her face, they couldn't help but shiver. Despite the fact that they had never seen her before, they were aware that the expression was inappropriate for the woman. But they also had the somber feeling that since they had gone to sleep, their prospects had gotten considerably worse. "Oh, it looks like the kiddies are all awake now," Aizawa responds. "Since you all took so long sleeping, we are going to skip introductions and go straight to the quirk assessment test. I would usually do usual fitness tests and let you use your quirks, but my new teaching assistant had the great idea to test your fighting skills himself and use that as a baseline." I laugh and say, "This is going to be fun." The students seem to get scared. Well, at least they are able to recognize when they are going to be beaten. Mina Ashiro's perspective. She was ecstatic about the prospect of becoming a hero when she first joined UA. Because of her unusual appearance of pink skin, horns, and golden eyes, she had always experienced some discrimination, but she made an effort to get over her fears by cultivating a vivacious personality. As she grew older, this enabled her to overcome her innate shyness and form friendships. But as she grew older, she struggled to overcome one fear. Snakes and spiders weren't involved. With a little acid from her quirk, those could be solved with ease. It wasn't water or heights. She was a good swimmer and could produce an airbag-like burst of diluted acid to handle a fall. No, it was always scary films. When she was younger, her father had attempted to entice her to watch them, but she found the music, sets, and cinematography to be fundamentally frightening. After the film ended, her mother had to spend 3 hours urging her to leave her protective blanket bundle. She continued to have nightmares for months after that. For what reason was this on her mind? Perhaps it's because she's wandering around a darkened building with exposed pipes, flickering light bulbs, and eerie music coming from invisible speakers. Damn it, she didn't sign up for a scary movie. Nevertheless, she kept moving as silently as she could while her eyes darted about, trying to spot any shapes in the shadows and turning to face any suspicious sounds. Her mind might be playing tricks on her, so even if she did see something, she couldn't be certain. This bewilderment, though, was short-lived as she started to hear a sharp object skidding against one of the pipes. She started running in the opposite direction as soon as she heard the screeching sound. She was aware that the goal was to fight the man their teacher had chosen, but she was not going to do that. Even though she was aware of her foolishness, she was adamant that she wasn't actually that stupid. She was therefore still far too intelligent to ever attempt to engage in physical combat with him. That's how stupid girls always perish. The crack of a whip was followed by the sound of light bulbs breaking, and the lights all around her began to go out. To stay in the light, Mina tried to run faster, but she was losing ground. She was forced to stand beneath the halo of light from the last light bulb she could see as the edge of darkness drew nearer by the moment. She looked everywhere, but she was unable to locate him. Until, that is, a voice raised directly next to her ear. He remarked, "You were pretty fast, I didn't think you had it in you. We can work on it later." Slowly, she turned to see the man's face beside hers. As she gazed at the expressionless face concealed behind sunglasses and a mask covering his lower face, the color left her face. Just before the last light goes out, he says, "Boo," simply. Mina would be the first to fall, and her scream echoes through the dark building's shadows as she was taken down by the cruel teaching assistant selected by the Class 1B teacher. Shota Aizawa's perspective. Watching the security camera footage from the test building, she grinned into her coffee. As Isaac pursued each student individually, student after student fell prey to his assaults. He hit them precisely and ruthlessly at their vulnerabilities. Due to her enhanced hearing, Kyoka Jiro was momentarily rendered unconscious by a whip crack close to her ear before being quickly knocked out. The narcissistic French girl was tricked into squandering her energy by repeatedly blasting her navel laser at any sound. The girl was already bowled over with a stomachache when Isaac arrived, which was a sad fact. He shared her disappointment. Despite Eiko Kirishima's increased resistance, Isaac's whip was too strong to overcome. The braided leather dug divots out of the rock-like girl's skin as he repeatedly struck her. His extraordinary skill was further evidenced by the fact that he knew exactly how far to push it without really causing significant harm. After straining her quirk in an effort to harden to the point where she could withstand the whip's blows, the stubborn girl finally passed out from exhaustion. The majority were a string of letdowns and failures that were easily preventable. Since the invisible girl had never taught herself to be quiet, she was defeated. Because of her lack of stealth, she was easily apprehended. The only funny thing was watching Isaac attempt to ignore the fact that he had threatened a naked girl with a whip and then tied her up. For weeks, she was eager to make fun of him. The girl with the sticky purple balls for hair was by far the worst. They adhered to everything but her, so she could remove them and use them as weapons of capture. In the end, Isaac used this against her by hitting the balls out of the air with bits of rock. In one way or another, he managed to chain them together into a sheet that quickly landed on the trainee hero and pinned her. The balls adhered to the ground and each other but not to her. As a result, she was buried beneath a jiggling purple mound and was unable to escape her own quirk. When strange things started to happen, there were only 4 girls left. All of the area's surveillance cameras started to go dark. She was aware that it was planned by several people as they were killed one by one in various places. She simply had no idea why. Point of view of Isaac Belmont. "So, it seems like it is just you 4 left," I remark while perched atop some debris that had fallen during one of my previous altercations. I glance out at the group of girls gathered around me. I had deliberately waited until the very end to confront them. For one straightforward reason, they were superior to the others. They hunted. With a few nails in one hand and a hammer in the other, one of them had short brown hair. Another girl, with green hair in a ponytail, twirled her spear idly and smiled. The third was crouching low, with a pair of flaming tails curling up behind her and cat ears formed of fire on her head. The final member of the group carried a sheathed sword and had long black hair. They were all obviously trained similarly to the Belmonts. The one with the black hair asks, "What are you doing in Japan?" Given that she appeared to have taken the initiative on her own, she must be the leader. The Belmonts are supposed to stay in Europe and the Americas. Why are you out of your territory? You can call me a black sheep, I shrug. I didn't fit the role they wanted, so they sent me packing. So, can you find it in your hearts to help a fellow hunter, or are we about to do this? A nail that flew through the air where my head was just a moment ago provided my response. I tilted my head out of the way and watched the nail go by, finally confirming a theory I had formed some time ago after spending some time with the renowned Belmont clan. A bunch of jerks or hunters. They are still people despite the fact that they shield others from supernatural threats. People are terrible when you consider the great majority of people on the planet. I only need to prove that I am the biggest shark in this pond if these idiots want to start a fight over territory. With a serious slashing motion and a whip strike with her flaming tails, the cat girl charges forward. I sidestep the blows and then counterattack with my own whip. Before exploding against the flame tails she used for protection, a burst of green fire shoots down the corded leather. Since the explosion completely penetrated her block, she flew into a wall. Greenie exhibits superhuman strength and reflexes, as well as the highest level of combat proficiency among the girls thus far. I had to put my whip back on my belt as a result, and then I pulled out my backup short sword. Although it is best for extremely close quarters and could give the hunter girls the impression that I am a forge master, I would much rather just use my dagger. Right now, I parry and block any blows she tries with my sword before shooting a burst of flame from the back of the blade. This launched it into the air, where it managed to cut the shaft of the spear in two. Her savage smile reappeared after a brief moment of surprise. We have a battle junkie in the house, apparently. I kick her to the side and send her packing because I don't want to fight her anymore right now. She falls and then collides with the still recovering cat girl, causing both of them to fall in a tangle of limbs. Sword girl immediately resumes our battle by slashing at me with her freshly drawn blade. I notice the sword itself as I deflect the blow. It was almost dripping with dark magic, as if it had been forged with death in it. Anywhere, I could spot such a weapon. It was a weapon made from monsters that still carried their spirit, a cursed blade. It appears that this sword is especially poisonous. Its user doesn't appear to be a particularly evil person, which is surprising. Not a baby murder psycho, but definitely an asshole. I had previously heard of some hunter clans utilizing cursed weapons, but the weapons have a tendency to choose their wielders carefully. When it comes to the girls it permits to wield, I suppose the sword must have some sort of corruption kink. Oh, it has been a while since a girl wanted to get hot and sweaty before sticking something in me, I joke while grinning. Usually, they want to take it to the bedroom first. You should have stayed out of Japan, she growls. I don't know why you are here, but all I know is you shouldn't be. The elders say someone in Ua is going to bring hell to our homeland. The only possibility is you, so I will do the world a favor and take you out of it. As she avoids me, she gets a tiny cut on my arm. As the sword digs deeper into my body, I can feel its magic working. As the curse infused into the blade takes effect, the cut on my arm turns black, leaving a mark that quickly moves toward my chest. In a matter of seconds, the curse attaches itself to my heart and presses it against my chest, crushing the muscle and stopping my blood supply. No one can survive Murasama, the one-cut killer, she declares. It destroys the victim's heart as it beats in their chest. You should have never come to Japan. I think your sword is a little overrated, I stammer. I just need to stop having a heart. I ram my hand deep into my chest and through the gym uniform I was wearing. I push it through muscle and bone until I reach my own heart, then I put my hand around it. I pull it out of my chest and, with a sudden surge of strength, tear it from the network of veins and arteries to which it is attached. I performed heart surgery on myself in front of the black-haired hunter, who was appalled. The brunette girl appeared uneasy, the green-haired girl was more amazed by my fierce move, and the cat girl took a moment to clear her stomach. The other three were also in various states of shock. The same black curse markings that the sword created are visible when I examine the organ itself. I simply ignite the contaminated flesh in a flash of green fire, turning it to ash, without making any special attachment to the wad of flesh. I guess you have never gone up against anyone with powerful regeneration before, I remark, wiping my ashy hand off my pants. I don't need a heart to fight all of you. I can just regenerate the blood in my veins to keep it flowing. I should only need to do this until I finish burning out the cursed cells in my body. I guess we will see if you all are strong enough to beat me even if I have a handicap. 1 hour later, it surprises me that they fight so hard. I can appreciate the skill and power they used against me as I gaze at their collapsed forms on the ground. I was unable to determine whether the Belmont sent their promising hunters for me or if the typical hunter in Japan was only a step above the majority of its fodder members. Given the way hunters think, the latter is most likely the case. If nothing else, they are unaware that I am a forge master. They would most likely summon every hunter in Japan to ensure that I die in one way or another. There was no one around when he finished dragging out the final hunter who was unconscious. All that remained was a note on a chair stating that everyone had gone to lunch because I was taking too long to play around. Well, that's fair. Had I not been holding back so much for the training exercise, I could have easily removed them even without my heart. Hold on. I sense something. It almost seems like a harmlessly stupid Momo is acting like a silly little goose once more. Her inability to learn is so endearing. I sing dementedly as I skip off to the cafeteria with a lot of energy. Oh, you better watch out, you better not cry, you better hide now, I'm telling you why. Isaac Belmont is coming to town, I say. He don't need a list, prepare for a fright, he's hunting you down, you've been naughty all right. Isaac Belmont is coming to town. Point of view of Momo Yayorozu. She ate a hearty lunch made by the pro-hero lunch rush while sitting with Eri on her lap. She was typically only allowed to eat the lunches Isaac made for her for dietary reasons, but he didn't realize that her quirk required a high-calorie intake because it burns body fat. He would always blame her inexperience with her quirk for the calorie drain. He even dared to remark that she most likely refrained from enhancing her quirk in order to eat as much as she pleased. Every time she thought about him saying that she would be overweight if it weren't for her quirk, her hand still twitched with the urge to slap his masked face. The humiliation. What do you know? She is rebelling in this way. Yes, that is correct. She is demonstrating to Isaac that she is not afraid of him by sticking it to him. What does it matter if she wants to have 12 cookies for lunch? That's her right after a lot of recent training. When you think about it, he is still one of her family's employees. He must pay attention to what she says. He must therefore allow her to eat whatever she desires. Isaac murmurs, "Looky here, Momo," into her ear. "What's all of this? I thought you were supposed to be eating the nutritious food I prepared and even brought to school for you. Yet, here I find you gorging on chocolate and sweets. Whatever will I do with you?" Her ideas of disobedience and righteous rage vanished as soon as Isaac's voice was heard. At that moment, Momo recalled why she never retaliated against him but always listened to what he had to say. In a nutshell, Isaac Belmont was frightening. Without any reaction or inconvenience, the unwavering force of his will crushed all opposition. It's what her father found so endearing about the man. But her mother found him endearing because he also had a softer side. With Eri, he could be so tender and kind that he appeared to be a totally different person. No matter how much he seemed to put her through, she continued to be with him because of that. "Hey, Eri Berry," he smiles. "Me and Mommy Momo need to talk. Could you switch to Mommy Himi for a minute?" The girl with silver hair grinned and said, "All right," while munching on a cookie. As the maid continued to wipe the young girl's face, she leapt onto Himiko's lap. But after Eri has moved, Momo makes every effort to get away from Isaac. She grabbed an armful of her cookies and ran full speed away from the table. She traveled a total of 10 feet before Isaac's whip bound her and she lay in a bundle on the ground. She squirmed in outrage as Isaac sat on her despite her attempts to crawl away like a worm. She writhed beneath him and cried out, "Let me go." She experienced flashbacks to this morning's push-ups as a result. "I can't until you get your punishment for going off the diet I carefully planned to help you," Isaac responds. The smug sound in his voice told her he was grinning. She was being terrorized by the bastard. What a jerk he is. He said, "I know the perfect thing," and turned to face Eri. "Hey, Eri Berry. Can you get a pitcher of water for me?" The silver-haired girl says, "Okay, Daddy," before jumping off Himiko's lap and leaving to find the water that was requested. A few moments later, she came back carrying a heavy pitcher that required 2 hands to hold. "Here you go." "Thanks," he said after giving it some thought. Momo had 1,000 ideas about the new sadism the man was going to inflict on her. Would he douse her with it and force her to wear drenched clothes for the next hour? Yes, he most likely only intended for her shirt to get wet so that it would become transparent. The savagery. How dare he plot such perversion against the heiress of the Yayorozu family? Squeezing her eyes shut, she had waited for the water to pour, but it never did. Even though she was still dry, she could hear it hit the floor. When she opened her eyes, she saw that Isaac was, in fact, dousing the stack of cookies she had attempted to flee with water. The crumbly and delicious little pieces of heaven disintegrated and dissolved under the water's flow as she watched in horror. "No, you monster!" she screamed in anguish. "Why did you have to hurt the cookies? They were innocent. They had so much more to give the world. It should have been me instead." "You brought this on yourself when you decided to go off the diet," her tormentor retorted. "If you didn't get greedy, then those cookies could have gone on to make so many people's days brighter. Instead, you doomed them to never fulfill their purpose in life and they will go to cookie purgatory to suffer for their grave failure." Point of view of Isaac Belmont. I could see that everyone else in the cafeteria was staring at us as if we were two morons. A guy sitting on top of a girl and dripping water on cookies nearly brought the girl to tears. Logically, I am aware that it appears extremely strange. I consider this to be perfectly normal. Eri was watching her mother and father play while she giggled off to the side. She was obviously as amused by Momo's responses as I was. It is reassuring to know that she has inherited my sense of humor even though she is not my biological daughter. After all, making fun of Momo is the most hilarious thing there is. Hitoshi Shinso's perspective. He couldn't help but laugh when he saw a man sitting on a girl, taunting her while he drowned her cookies. It brought back memories of the time Izuku, the vengeful god of nutrition, descended upon him after he made the decision to give up vegetables. He recalled Izuku sitting on his head and shoving Brussels sprouts into his mouth. Oh, the good times. He sat down at an empty table and glanced over at Izumi's presence. She was chatting with the friends she had made in Ua and wasn't distracted by the cookie disaster that was going on nearby, unlike most of the cafeteria. Here, unlike at their previous schools, her quirkless past had not haunted her, allowing her to make friends with ease. That was the other reason Hitoshi had been watching her more intently than normal. He was more aware than most that her current level of power wasn't an accident. Around the time of Izuku's death, something occurred that he was never able to understand. It had sustained her during the years after his passing and endowed her with a strength that outweighs the majority of the peculiarities he had witnessed. It was also evident that she was currently undergoing combat training. He was positive it wasn't from Katsumi. Years had passed since their altercation, and they were no longer together. They were at best merely adversaries. Hina sits across from him and says, "You are going to burn a hole through her if you keep looking at her like that. How has your first day been so far?" "We did physical tests and had orientation to generate a baseline for growth," her brother replied. "And it wasn't like I was glaring at her." "You didn't have to with how intensely you were looking at her," Hina responds. "She is a big girl now with a quirk. You don't have to watch out for her just for Izuku." Hitoshi says, "I know," as he at last looks at his sister. "I just don't trust how she got her quirk." "Oh, you thought she should just change her genetics," she responds. "How else do you think people get quirks?" As Hitoshi explains, it just doesn't make sense when it happened. If a quirk ever gets unlocked in someone who had a dormant ability, it happens at the same time as whatever trigger event. The only two things that happened to her that could explain it are that sludge villain attack she got in the middle of an Izuku's death. Nothing happened before she was saved by All Might, and it definitely happened before Izuku's death since she used it to get through everything. Power like that doesn't come from nowhere. "Whatever," Hina replies, rolling her eyes. "Play with your tinfoil hat all you want. Anyway, are you fitting in okay? It must be hard being the only guy in 1A. "They leave me alone most of the time," Hitoshi shrugs. "I think most of them believe I am going to be on the way out before we ever reach the sports festival." "I guess they are in for a rude awakening," Hina jokes. "If there is one thing you are, it is stubborn. I bet you get into the tournament easily." He asks, "What about you, sis? Are you going to try for the hero course? You know this is your best chance since your quirk works on people. I still remember how much you used to talk about becoming a pro. You still can." Hina casually remarks, "I doubt anyone wants to see someone with a villain quirk competing," while rearranging her food on her plate. "I will probably just get out in the first step." "Come on, Hina," sighs Hitoshi. "You don't have a villain's quirk. I know it. Izuku knew it. You are the only person who doesn't believe." With a, "Let's talk about something different," Hina interrupts the conversation. "You meet any cute girls in your class? I want little nieces and nephews to spoil, ASAP." "Jesus Christ, Hina," laughs Hitoshi. "Well, there was this one mushroom girl." With a smile on her face and a sparkle in her eye, Hina asks, "Oh, really? Did you ask her to check out your mushroom too?" Hitoshi instantly laments ever succumbing to the temptation. He simply moans while his sister, being the degenerate that she is, keeps making double entendres. Shigaraki's perspective, he sat at the bar and looked at the whiskey in his cup, thinking in silence. The bartender asks, "Is it not up to your standards, my lord?" She wore a silver brace around her neck and a spotless formal suit. But the same shape of her body was obscured by a cloud of swirling black and purple smoke that covered her skin. Two bright yellow eyes peered out of the smoke cloud, the only trace of her face. "I can discard the bottle if it is displeasing to you." "No, it is truly no problem, Kurogiri," he responds. "I was just lost in thought for a moment. Your concern is appreciated nonetheless." She bows and says, "Of course, my lord," before grabbing a glass and starting to polish it. He asked the gaseous barman, "Tell me, what do you think about Tamura? How does her appear to be preparing?" Kurogiri responds, "He is unrefined, my lord," putting down her polishing cloth and cup. "He is strong, but inexperienced. He lets his emotions and any passing fancy distract him. It renders him unreliable for rigid plans that require discipline and patience. He is far too reactionary to fulfill a suitable leadership role as he is now." "My thoughts exactly," the man concurs. "That is why I need you to watch over him in the coming weeks." Left to his own devices, he would likely fail before he could even start and die in the process. "No, I have invested far too much effort to see my work wasted so carelessly." "So what shall I do?" inquires Kurogiri. "Help him retrieve the schedules and class information in a few days," says Shigaraki. "When it comes time to reveal our plans at the USJ, you will act as his lieutenant and advisor." Tamura believes that this is his chance to kill All Might herself. "No, this is simply a learning opportunity. A proof of concept, if you will." I want to see how Tamura reacts in a real-life scenario and find out if he has untouched potential waiting for me to make use of it. Furthermore, it lets me see how powerful his creations currently stand. Fortitude is just a number after all. If we want to truly know, we need to test them against the best and brightest of the next generation. These Nomu should prove to be entertaining. With Tamura's developing skill and my power, there is no limit to the masterpieces we can craft. When he was done talking, he switched on the phone next to him at the bar. Surveillance footage of a dimly lit room appeared on the screen. It had been converted from its original use as a morgue to a new one. The central examination tables had been removed in favor of a structure that resembled both an anvil and an altar. The metal wound across its surface, etched with runes. The body of a deceased man in his 30s rested on the center of the anvil. A 20-year-old man with pale blue hair wearing a black shirt and torn jeans was the only other person in the room. His face had one of the many taxidermy hands attached to his body. Before he struck the surface of the anvil, he held a hammer that lit up with blue light along its head. Through the anvil and into the corpse on top, the magic surged. It became a bipedal creature with 4 eyes, fangs, and scales covering its body as its body twisted and changed. The newly created beast snarled and drooled, its eyes glowing the same color as the magic it had been given. Behind the hand covering his face, the man with blue hair was smiling. He smiles as well and shuts off his phone. The proximity of 2 forge masters had not been seen for centuries. Not since Dracula's time and his European conquest. There weren't many instances of the practitioners fighting because they were frequently territorial. Tamura might use this as motivation to improve his work. The boy had not yet matured. He had not endured enough trials to sharpen his edge and eliminate flaws, much like a blade. There was no doubt what it might be, recalling the stories of kaiju appearing and then vanishing a few seconds later. A forge master establishing his business amidst the heroes and all might. Let's see if Tamura can use another blade to sharpen himself. Eri was a very sweet and patient girl, but she was still a child with a limited attention span. She was therefore simply not made to spend a lot of time in a high school classroom. She was capable of handling a few classes or even a full day, but she couldn't handle the daily grind of sitting motionless like that. I'm currently on Eri duty to solve this. During a class period, Himiko, Momo, or I are the ones who watch her. I was taking this shift because I wanted to give Momo more time to concentrate on her schoolwork while Himiko ran errands. Aizawa enters the room and asks, "How are my favorite little nitwits?" The rest of the class is off in Mike's awful English class. "Yeah, I know you learn the language, but Cammy, at what cost?" "That is why me and Eri are working on our coloring," I respond. "Isn't that right, Eri Berry?" "Yep," she exclaims before grinning at me and proudly displaying a drawing she did. Aizawa looks at it in shock, and I start laughing right away. "What do you think?" "I think it is an awesome drawing," I say to her. "I couldn't do better myself." The teacher asks thoughtfully, "Is that a robot holding another robot's severed head up while the body bleeds oil out on the ground?" "Uh-huh," Eri affirms. "Papa and I watched Zeus beating up a loser bot and busting his head off. It was awesome." "You really watch World Robot Boxing with an 8-year-old? I respond to Aizawa. "Isn't that kind of violent for her age?" I shrug. "She likes it, so I don't see a lot of issues. She watches horror movies with Himiko all the time and she ends up comforting Himiko, who is the one who actually gets scared." Aizawa gives in and approaches the room's monitor. "Fair enough," she says. "Want to watch some of the hero training footage for Class 1A? The blonde buffoon is training them and I want to see how unruly Khan's brats are." "Hey, Eri Berry, do you want to watch a bunch of idiots beat each other up?" I inquire. She replies, "Like the robots?" "Yeah, but dumber and bloodier," I respond. She cheerfully chirps, "Sure," before leaping from her chair and landing in my lap to watch with me. "Dial it up, Sleepy Sensei." "Cheeky little brat," Aizawa murmurs tenderly while playing the video on a remote. Right now it is apparently a girl with engines in her legs and a walking explosion fetish against a Benjamin Button's weird niece and the human equivalent of a wet toaster. "That sounds like a train wreck," I remark. "I love it. Let the blood games begin." Eri also cheers. "Death to the loser." I also cheer. "Yeah, death to the loser." Aizawa simply sighs fondly and rolls her eyes. "Oh, we've already melted the icy Tsunere heart of the sadist." Eri's emotional walls couldn't take my rough charms and her cute puppy dog eyes. As we watch some of the live footage of Katsumi and the running girl protecting a fake bomb from a girl who appeared to be able to change her age at the drop of a hat and another with electricity powers, Aizawa asks me, "What do you think about them?" All of their abilities are way too underdeveloped, I think. If this is the best UA can find, it makes me sad to think about how Japan is going to turn out. Aizawa asks, what do you mean? They might be rough around the edges since they just started, but they haven't been given counseling on advanced quirk training yet. For the most part, they do seem to fit with UA standards. You probably need to raise your standards, I say. All of their abilities are still so flawed. I mean, I read the file on that lightning girl. Her IQ plummets when she exceeds her safe voltage. She should be tired at best, temporarily powerless at worst. None of them have even tried purifying their powers. Purifying? Asks Aizawa again. What does that mean? Don't your eyes get dry if you use your nullification? I inquire. That is a flaw in your ability. All quirks have limits and flaws, she responds. They are physical powers at the end of the day. Yeah, but they are also spiritual and conceptual too, I respond. How else could they just evolve in an emotionally charged moment or through our own perception of them? We can't just become immune to poison after a flashback on the brink of death or learn to breathe carbon monoxide upon realizing it is a gas like oxygen. The human body doesn't work like that. Spiritual? Aizawa queries doubtfully. You make it sound like they are. You know, magic, I say when she stops talking. That's because quirks are just flawed magic forcefully activated in women. Aizawa asks incredulously, magic? Before simply rolling her eyes. Yeah, right. I dig my dagger into the air next to me after removing it from the sheath that is concealed up my wrist. When I slash it forward, a clawed hand can reach through a cut in the dimensional fabric that rips open in a line of green fire. It cuts off my extended arm and seizes the severed limb before it drops. The stump of my arm heals with flickering green flames as bone extends, muscles encase it, and skin covers the appendage as it is restored to a perfect state. Aizawa loses her shit and only loses it more when the stump heals. That is, excluding the need to replace my scars, which are too deeply ingrained in my spirit to ever disappear. Before the clawed hand pulls the old arm into the rift and closes, I remove the dagger from my old hand. I say, see, magic, as if I were showcasing a particularly strange chip I discovered in a Tostitos bag. Nothing to it. Eri replies, yep, nothing to it, since even an 8-year-old was unfazed by this degree of violence and gore. Aizawa is able to ask, how did you do that? Men don't have quirks. I have magic, I declare. I don't understand what is so confusing. I mean, a man can't just open an infernal rift, have his arm cut off, and regrow it through magical healing without being accepted. Wow, I didn't know we were living in the Dark Ages. God, don't call the Inquisition on me. Midnight might be into some of their ideas of fun, but not me. I give up, says Aizawa. I will try to make sense of this later. For now, I just watch a bunch of kids get beat up. Eri exclaims, yay, violence, with the adorable gremlin's voice. Let's examine Kachan's development over the last 3 years. It turns out that she has developed into a slightly more restrained violent temperamental woman from the violent temperamental girl of her childhood. She is far more precise and focused than in our previous fights. Her explosions are deliberate rather than impulsive, and they are set off with purpose rather than passion. Glasses was attempting to make Sparky act impulsively by running circles around her. Given that Sparky didn't seem to have much control over her electricity, this was a pretty smart move. She simply let it out in fits that she was unable to control or concentrate on. To be honest, one of the safer things she could do would be to release a large amount of fluid at the appropriate moment. Whether or not it catches Glasses is a risk, but it would free Katsumi to engage in uninterrupted combat with her opponent. That's crucial because the girl in question is really a pain in the ass. She appears to transition between different ages, which gives her a unique ability to evade attacks by altering her body's size and composition. If your opponent suddenly becomes 2 feet shorter and 10 years younger, a right hook to the head would undoubtedly miss. Since the girl appeared to be able to transform into various forms and repair minor damage in between transformations, there must have been some trick involved. A tiny cut on her cheek closed when she transformed into a younger form. The fact that her adult forms could differ significantly was another example. One had muscles from a weight training regimen, while the other was obviously more suited to agility with a runner's physique. She was able to switch between them with a fluidity that suggested both a great deal of practice and innate talent. I ask Aizawa, what's the aging girl's name? She is pretty good. Nezuko Kamado, declares Aizawa. Her file says her quirk is age range. She can alter her age along her lifespan at will. Her older forms aren't set in stone and represent possible futures that she could live. I say, that's wrong, That sounds like a more versatile and personally focused version of Aries' quirk. She is different. Before I snap my fingers in realization, I pause to think. Stem cells. Aizawa queries, what about stem cells? She isn't changing her age, I respond. She is just shifting her body and tissue back to an earlier recorded state. That is also why she can have variants of future bodies. They're just theoretical projections, so she can easily follow established paths that she imagines to make a version how she could look at some point in the future. Aizawa asks, where does the difference in mass come and go from? Before I simply glance at her. Oh right, silly me. I forgot it was just magic. Now you are getting it, I respond. Now shush, the standoff is happening. With her finger in the pin, Katsumi was pointing her grenade-themed gauntlet at Nezuko and threatening to shoot it. It seems that she was using it as a bluff to force the girl to give up. I am one of the few people who know her well enough to notice the difference from her typical outbursts of rage and violence. I looked at the designs for her support items, which is also helpful. A safety feature on those gauntlets keeps them from firing accidentally or if a villain were to get their hands on one. There is still an active safety on the gauntlet in the video. She is merely acting in order to force her opponent to give up. It is a rather nonviolent tactic. She has developed significantly as a person. Even so, I would continue to watch her get hit by a car while eating popcorn, but hey, baby steps. This was prior to Glasses tying Sparky up with capture tape and rendering her brain dead. When she sees Katsumi threatening Nezuko, she immediately overreacts and rushes back. She must not think highly of her teammate because she tackles Katsumi right away, thinking incorrectly that the bomber would actually detonate the blast. The gauntlet instantly triggers and sends a massive funneled explosion down the corridor, indicating that the safety must have been struck in the attack and rendered inoperable. The far wall is completely destroyed, and a significant amount of the building collapses. Shota Aizawa's perspective, she discovered a new weight on her just as she was ready to jump out of her chair. Eri is now seated on her lap when she looks down. When she quickly glances at the chair Isaac was sitting in, she sees that it is spinning and empty. Papa said he needs to go do something real quick, she says. We can hang out for a bit, Sleepy Sensei. Sure, she replies, giving up and giving the little girl with silver hair a head pat. She doesn't care what stupid thing Isaac does now. Point of view of Isaac Belmont. I leapt out of the building's side door and cut a hole in the ground. I yell, Cheetah. And then a huge silver figure emerges from the green flames. It was a huge feline creature, its body plated in silver, with darker patches set into the organic metal. Its metal enclosure's edge was created to maximize aerodynamic movement and reduce drag from wind resistance. It had a snarling mouth full of razor-sharp teeth to go along with the sharpened claws on each foot and the thin spikes lining its tail, but no eyes were visible because there was only smooth metal where its eyes would be. There are two possible outcomes for every creation made with a Forgemaster. Because I don't like the random factor, I try to avoid the first one whenever I can. It entails creating a body and summoning a spirit to inhabit it. This is flawed because the forger is attempting to exert too much control over the creation. This implies that the night creature that is created will be weaker because whatever soul is called from hell will probably have a weaker affinity for their new body. My approach is to invoke a specific soul and design the body with them in mind. This enables the soul to strengthen the body rather than weaken it because of incompatibilities. Although it requires more time, this enables me to create genuinely exceptional and one-of-a-kind night creatures. Quality is more important than quantity. Cheetah was created from the body of a villain who could travel at Mach 5 through the skies. The soul I used was a Kenyan Olympic sprinter who voluntarily descended into a drug addiction after his steroid addiction was exposed. When he robbed a man to obtain more cash for drugs, he even killed him. I make an effort to adhere to the original Isaac's beliefs about trying to save the souls of our creations while they are under our authority. I did not give the body ears or eyes because of this. I wanted him to be able to concentrate only on the sensation of the wind on his face and the feel of the road beneath his feet. This meant that he would have to realize what he threw away with steroids and stimulants and acknowledge what he loved about running in the first place. Cheetah was by far the fastest of my various night creatures over comparatively short distances. He was your cheetah if you had somewhere to go and just a moment to get there. As soon as I leap onto his back, he charges forward, his enormous body effortlessly shattering the sound barrier while his clawed feet rip the earth to pieces. I can communicate basic information to my night creatures, so I gave him a general direction and kept a reasonable distance, and he took care of the rest. Regarding that ride, it is safe to say two things. It was brief, to start. Second, if I hadn't been incredibly resilient and could have healed at any time, I would have been a bloody streak across the UA campus. A hiss of heat is released from the dark spots on Cheetah's body as he finally grinds to a stop in an empty section of the mock city. I yell, "Mongo!" once more after returning him across a rift. Before her head appears, a huge worm bursts out and burrows into the ground. The Mongolian death worm, which travels underground and ambushes its prey, was similar to this night creature. The body I used belonged to a geokinetic hero who sold her body to science before the Yaoyorozus bought it from a research firm. During the US gold rush, the soul belonged to a gold digger's wife. She killed her husband after he discovered a gold vein so she could keep all the money for herself. Because the tunnel collapsed on her and the husband was unable to reinforce it, she ultimately perished. She feels the oppressive weight of the earth pressing down on her forever, as if she were still being buried alive, so this is her penance. In situations like this, when a victim is trapped beneath a pile of hazardous debris, I use her as a subterranean rescue unit. Before she plunges back under the street's surface, I slide into a protected notch in her neck. She rips through the underground space, her body exploding through metal pipes, asphalt, and concrete foundations. We soon arrived at the training building's collapsed section. Mongo circles the spot where Nezuko appeared to be interred and secretes a slime from her body that solidifies and stabilizes the debris. After the debris has stabilized, she slowly expands and starts pumping clean oxygen into the alcove her coiling body has created. In addition to acting as a CO2 scrubber when there isn't any air to waste deep underground, I designed her to be able to filter pollutants from the air. As soon as I exit the notch I was riding in, Nezuko is lying in the middle of Mongo's cleared space. It didn't take a genius to figure out she was already dead. She died alone before I could reach her, as evidenced by the glassy look in her eyes, the mangled state of her body, and the regrettable amount of blood. The words, "God damn it," I murmur. I believe that I could reach her in time. My vision seems to blur and flicker as I gaze at the body until a different girl lies there. My stomach turned when I saw her green hair, but after I rubbed my eyes, everything returned to normal. But in that instant, I had made up my mind. On my watch today, nobody was dying. Making a cut in the air, I take out a leather book. The Forgemaster Isaac wrote it while traveling to Japan to research the kaiju that spawned there. The cured skins of several daikaja he killed during his research are used to make the pages and binding. He wrote information about night creatures and forging on each sheet, hoping that a Forgemaster who would follow his path of redemption would use it. I turn the pages until I come across one that describes a ritual. In order to hold a soul lifted from the depths of hell, normal forging transforms a body into a new shape. But Isaac found out that forging could bring someone back to life. They only needed to be dead for a short while and have their original body. This is due to the fact that their soul would not have enough time to completely transition into the afterlife. If the soul in question was headed to hell, it wouldn't be as big of a problem, but I had the impression that Nezuko's soul was moving toward heaven. I have to hurry because of this. I slit my wrist and start drawing runic arrays and symbols around Nezuko's body with the blood that is streaming out. The body will heal and the soul will return to the mortal plane as a result. I quickly finish the ritual circle by throwing away the shattered remnants of her costume and beginning to paint the symbols on her body using my own blood. This is due to the fact that my blood has a greater affinity for the magic and would be essential for providing the ritual with the last boost it needs. I start chanting the lines from the book after I've finished getting ready. Those who had seen hell and looked into its depths spoke that language. Glancing back, the infernal pit imprinted some of its chaotic power on our souls. That is what gives me the extraordinary ability to forge and use soul magic, as well as the ability to use hellfire. The blood ignites in green fire as I chant. As the magic intensifies, the flames roar across the runic circle and symbols. With these words, I claim thy soul from thy eternal rest. I bind thee into my service until I allow thy spirit to pass on once more. Heaven's grace and hell's damnation cannot touch you under my power. Your role is for life reborn. The flames are all drawn into Nezuko's body like a vacuum after those last words. They return her to the world of the living by filling her body with demonic magic and funneling it into her mouth and nose. As the magic transforms and purifies her body to hold her soul once more, her body jerks and thrashes. She gives one final spasm before falling to the ground. I briefly worry that she was still dead because it didn't work. But then, almost miraculously, her heart starts beating and her lungs start pumping, and she gasps. The tips of her black hair turn orange as her body gradually shrinks from that of an 18-year-old girl to that of an 8-year-old like Eri. To hide her, I simply remove my jacket and wrap it around her small frame. Whether the reversed aging is related to the ritual or her natural magic is unknown to me. Since this is my first experience resurrecting a deceased person, I genuinely have no idea. This is a clear victory in my opinion. Something ripped a huge hole in Mongo's side, and I barely moved out of the way as my senses begged me to avoid it. I just winced as she screamed in agony as she was cut to pieces. I had my right arm cut above the elbow, my dagger in my left hand, and my left arm cradling Nezuko. I slice the air with an awkward roll in midair, creating a rift that catches Mongo. I can store my various night creatures in my pocket dimension, which also keeps them in stasis for situations like this where they are seriously hurt. I sincerely hope that I will eventually be able to heal her. Finding another body with a geokinetic quirk and calling her soul back would be a huge hassle. My gaze flits to the sudden assailant. Wearing a black suit with silver accents, he was crouched atop a shattered concrete support column. Although a respirator mask mostly covered his face, I could still identify that spiky purple hair anywhere. Congratulations to Hitoshi for joining the Kaiju Defense Force. So you are the guy making Kaiju signatures pop up around here recently, Hitoshi responds. Kakeru owes me 1,000 yen for finding you first. She really should have listened to Captain Ashiro when she said not to bet against me. Oh, you are all kinds of weird too. At last, he saw my arm regrowing until it was completely healed. When he realizes that I might be more dangerous than I appear, his eyes seem to sharpen. With a blade sheathed at the small of his back, Hitoshi asks, "You wouldn't happen to be a kaiju, now would you?" "No, I am just a homegrown human like you," I say, flexing my hand. "I was just on my way right now. If you know what's good for you, you will let me leave." Everyone always said a guy could never be an officer in the Kaiju Defense Force, he recalls. You could say I don't really care what's good for me. After all, that is my classmate you were trying to take. I say, shame, and then I whistle. A number of shadowy figures emerge from hiding and rush in Hitoshi's direction. I released a number of expendable night creatures along with Mongo. Their sharp metallic feathers and bright red eyes gave them the appearance of crows. They all dove at Hitoshi, but he quickly slashed through all 6 of the birds by drawing the pair of short swords from behind him. Like a typical Defense Force officer, he even broke through their cores. But these aren't kaiju. Since night creatures have souls, which kaiju do not, they do not have the core that is necessary for them to function. I made this model to capitalize on a Defense Force officer's propensity to automatically destroy cores. Suicide bomber souls were used to create these night creatures. As long as they remain in this form, they will always be in pain from their explosions. In reality, their body contains an explosive that serves as their pseudo-core. Only when it is destroyed does it become active. When their internal explosives are cut, the crows explode. Since the blasts had been all around Hitoshi when they exploded, he is completely engulfed in the smoke that results. If he was injured, I don't really care. That probably didn't hurt him all that much. Rather, I simply run out of there. The best strategy for winning a fight is to stay out of it. If I'm not present, I cannot lose. When I have to dodge multiple bullets from Hitoshi, who was brandishing his pistol, this plan is literally blown up. As I dodge the shots meant to harm my legs and render me immobile without putting Nezuko in danger, the kaiju rounds punch enormous chunks out of the concrete surrounding me. Excellent shooting and strategic planning. I knew I made a wise choice in my childhood best friend. I moved far enough away so that I could use my hunting skills to swiftly and stealthily eliminate him. No point in dragging this out and risking someone else joining the fight. Hitoshi Shinso's perspective. He finds himself in an open intersection while attempting to track down the target and has no idea where he has gone. The man seemed to have vanished into thin air. He was only able to detect an approaching attack and see the man standing behind him with a fist flying toward his head because of the training instructor Shinomiya had given him. He tries to counter after dodging out of the way, but his opponent has already vanished. There was something about that move that bothered him. He was unable to identify it, but something about it felt familiar. He then recalled how, after easily slipping past him, instructor Shinomiya had done the same thing during a practice match. It had slipped from his mind since he had been punched so hard at the time that he was sent face first into the ground. Up until now, it left the memory somewhat hazy. But that wasn't it either. It reminded him of something from even earlier. A smile that lit up an emerald pair of eyes. He was struck in the face by bandaged hands. He was stretched out on a practice mat, and there was the sound of laughter. Yes, it made him think of Izuku. Izuku laughs and bounces on his feet, circling his moaning body on the ground. "Come on, Hitoshi," he exclaims. "I need a good sparring partner. You are a decent enough brawler, so you should be able to handle this." He murmurs, "You are such an asshole," as his friend laughs more. "Are you really going to take this lying down?" Izuku inquires. "I guess I should just tell Hina how I beat your ass like a drum." Wait, I don't like how that sounds kind of sexual. He mutters about better insults while sighing at his friend's disorganized thoughts. To think that his best friend was this idiot. He couldn't understand why, but he wouldn't trade it for anything. The leg sweeping his own from under him startled him out of his reverie. As he is falling backward, the guy brought the same foot up before swinging it down in a devastating axe kick. THST cratered his body into the asphalt of the road. Even through his suit, he sensed that. What was this jackass's strength? As he joked, said jackass continued to press him into the ground with his foot. Not bad, but not great either, the guy comments, his expression clearly amused even behind the face mask he was wearing. I would give you a 6.5 out of 10, maybe a 7 if I am being generous. As the man keeps digging his foot into his stomach, he moans, are you always such a dick or am I just that special? In his own words, don't put yourself down, it isn't every day that there is a man who can wear a Defense Force suit. After all, only girls have ever been compatible. So, you should hit the gym some more. You are a decent enough fighter, but you could use some polish. It would be so embarrassing for you if I beat your ass like a drum again the next time we fought. Why does that sound so weird? I should probably not say that around people until I find a way to make it sound less sexual. The man carries a miniature Nezuko in his arm and idly strolls off, muttering about new insult ideas. It takes him a moment to make the connection, but when he tries to jump up, his stomach rejects the idea. He promptly throws up from the axe kick, pushing up what was left of his breakfast. He looks back at the man, but he's already gone. Point of view of Isaac Belmont. While Aizawa was looking at me with unwavering eyes and Eri and Nezuko ran around the room hopping up on boxes of chocolate and juice, I was relaxing in my chair once more. I remark, you know, for a gal with chronic dry eye, you can sure keep those peepers open for an awful long time, while browsing through my phone's collection of failures. It never ceases to amaze me that the people in them seem to get more stupid the more I watch them. She asks, how did you do it? Look this sexy on a daily basis. I respond, good genes and a good diet. Why do you ask? I meant bring a student back to life after censors said that she died, says Aizawa. I gesture to Nezuko as he playfully tackles Eri. A little infernal necromancy here, a little heresy there, a pinch of blasphemous fairy dust, and boom, I say. A resurrected 8-year-old. She was 18, says Aizawa in a terse manner. How about you resurrect someone so I can take a turn nitpicking you instead? I say. At the very least, you just need to wait a decade and she should be normal. Probably, unless she is now immortal or something. Aizawa raises an eyebrow and responds, really? I bring you a miracle and you keep poking holes in my innocent sentiments, I say, sounding offended. So this is what Jesus felt like. You can't compare yourself to the Son of God when you literally just described it as demonic necromancy, Aizawa argues. I'm right. Infernal necromancy, not demonic, one has to do with hell and the other has to do with demons. Similar, but very different. You are seriously going to try and debate theological grammar instead of answer my question? Aizawa responds. As I get to my feet, Eri suddenly jumps on my back like a sugar-high spider monkey. No, I am going to head out to a junkyard with my kid and leave you with the chibi student, I say. See ya. I quickly run out of there, only slowing down to avoid Aizawa's capture scarf until I'm free to leave the building and go home. As I ran down the hall with Eri humming cowboy music on my back, I could still hear Aizawa's sigh of annoyance over my laughter. I say to my child, here we are, Eri Berry, as we stand in front of a huge junkyard. The promised land. That says Tokyo Industrial Scrapyard, she notes, pointing to a sign. I respond, I've heard it both ways, and dismiss the assertion. What matters is that this place is a goldmine for research. Eri asks, clearly doubtful, what kind of research do you do with a bunch of trash? God, not even my own daughter has faith in me. Saying, this is scrap, not trash, I cut the padlock that secures the gate. I push open one of the doors, yank it off, and motion for Eri to leave. I continue talking as I follow her into the yard. Trash is the useless debris people build up and toss away to prevent clutter and disease. Scrap is discarded technology that people have abandoned for any number of reasons, from it breaking down to it becoming obsolete. This is the land of VHS tapes, iPod shuffles, and Tesla cars. With bewilderment, Eri asks, what's a Tesla? Exactly, I reply. For lack of a better word, they were shitty electric cars made by a guy who wanted to colonize Mars for some reason, and they were designed with batteries that couldn't work in the winter. Eri asks, why would anyone use those? to feel good about not burning liquid fossil fuels so that they could instead charge it with electricity generated by burning solid fossil fuels, I say plainly to her. Dummies, Eri murmurs sorrowfully. I know, I acknowledge. People can be goofy sometimes. We both meander through alleys that are occasionally just large enough for a person to walk through and shelves of mechanical parts that extend well above our heads. Since most of it is exposed to the sky, a large portion of the technology found here is covered in rust and corrosion. Eri yells, "Oh my God," as she rushes up to the remnants of the cybernetic rhinoceros. It is missing a leg and one of its eyes, and its side has a huge hole with only a few wires trailing out. There were a few dents in its armor plating, but not enough to conceal its original appearance. It is so cool. I remark, nice find, wondering absently how awesome a night creature based on a rhino would be. This is a newer generation design. It must have been used in the Colosseum games. Eri looks away from the robotic rhino and asks, what is that? It is kind of like the World Robot Boxing Competition combined with ancient blood sports, I say. They use robots and have big battles that are a lot more complex than the boxing matches of the WRB. Eri asks, why don't we watch that too? I have a soft spot for boxing, I say, reminiscing about what seems like a very long time ago. But the Colosseum games are a little extreme, even in my opinion. Most of the people who compete in it aren't nice guys, so I try and steer clear. As for this rhino, it looks like it was beat to shit by some kind of robot. My guess is that it was fighting against a humanoid who won. It probably got trashed afterwards. That's sad, Eri says in a serious tone. It shouldn't be thrown out if it messed up. More than I could handle, her dejected expression tugged at my heart. I couldn't ignore it. Would I have to be some sort of monster? I ask Eri, how about we take it and fix it up? It would be a pretty neat surprise for Mommy Himi and Mommy Momo, right? She exclaims, yeah, before I create a hole in space and pull the mechanical beast inside with multiple clawed hands. We continue to walk through the various scrap racks until I hear metal give a protesting groan and then scream. As its supports fail under the strain of its weight and years of rust and neglect, a huge shelf of parts tumbles down towards us. I simply draw my whip and send a burst of fire down the length of braided leather, causing Eri to back away in fear. I use the whip to hit the falling shelf, causing the hellfire to blast away any debris and cut through the heavy structure. As I look around for any danger, a few pieces fall around us, but nothing approaches. But where I wasn't looking was where the danger was. Perched on a plateau above the rest of the scrapyard was this section. Since the ground beneath us gives out and sends us sliding down a steep cliff with shelves of waste following closely behind, the ground must have been wet and soft from yesterday's storm. As we speed down the muddy slope, Eri screams, "Daddy," with terrified eyes. Mongo would have been the perfect night creature to summon, but Hitoshi's slice and dice routine rendered her inoperable. He appears to have been overtrained by Hoshino. Even when he believes I'm dead, that midget knows how to ruin my day. I then dispatch Gamma, Spore, and a few spiders. Gamma grabs hold of the muddy cliff and spits out a stream of poisonous green bile that covers the debris behind us and solidifies like fast dry cement. With his body's tendrils spreading out and containing the wave, Spore crashes down, roots himself in place, and then catches the solidified mass. As Spore continues his defense, the tiny spiders spin their webs to strengthen the cracking bile. I search for Eri after the worst of the danger has passed, but she is nowhere to be found. A second ago, she was beside me, but as soon as I looked away, she was gone. Eri, I yell. Where are you? Eri, she yells, I am here, from above me. She was being held up by the collar of her jacket by a robot arm that the landslide had uncovered from underground. She was being held in the air, waving joyfully. I couldn't take my eyes off the ground in front of her, even though it was a pleasant sight. The spot where Eri would have fallen was marked by a jagged metal beam that protruded from the ground. She would have perished if not for the arm. I stopped dead in my tracks as I slammed my dagger into the slope, my hellfire instantly turning the mud to stone. I clamber back up the slope, my feet and hands solidifying the damp ground into handholds as I return to Eri and embrace her. Eri simply hums contentedly as I pause, terrified that I may have lost her. Eri says, "It's okay, Daddy," and cuddles up to me. The nice robot saved me. I look down at the arm that has been buried for how many years. It comes up out of the ground. It appeared to have come from hell to rescue her. Whistling back to Spore and Gamma, I slide down to the lower level of the junkyard, holding Eri safely. They move over to the buried robot, leaving behind the pile of trash. As Spore uses his tendrils to retrieve the forgotten bot from his tomb, the spiders swarm his back. Gamma puts the robot in his mouth after he leaves, and then they come back through a hole I made. I say, how about we head home, Airy Berry? I think we've had enough excitement for one day. As long as we get ice cream, she exclaims. Just don't tell your moms how we spent the afternoon, I'm saying. Airy says, we just had ice cream and watched a heartfelt movie about the power of friendship, and she nods admiringly. I smile and say, that's my girl, as we make our way back to the front door. Momo stands behind me and says, I hear you took Airy to a junkyard and she almost died on a metal beam, which causes me to start perspiring. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Momo is in angry Momo mode. Oh no, she threatened me with a literal briefcase nuke the last time I annoyed her this much. I slowly turn around, and her expression makes me wince. Momo's adorable pout makes it difficult to take her seriously when she's just irritated. I have witnessed trained bodyguards wither beneath the scowl that darkens her face when she is truly angry. The same one I'm looking at right now. If I'm being completely honest, the extra element of danger does make her appear hotter. I don't think she wants to hear that right now, for some reason. Have I ever told you that you look sexy as hell when you are mad? I inquire. Her frown now seems to portend even more suffering. Yes, that was not what she wanted to hear. That wasn't an answer, Belmont, she responds. She's also referring to me by my last name. I'm in trouble. In my defense, it was supposed to be a harmless trip to a junkyard, I argue. I need to mess around with tech if I can't tinker with night creatures. You know how many kaiju sensors there are in Musutafu thanks to UA. It has been nothing but luck that we don't have the defense force breathing down our necks thinking that we are experimenting with creating kaiju. That explains the defense force officers in Class 1A, Momo continues. They usually don't bother sending them to UA. I say, fuck, which ones? I already met the guy. Who are the others? A guy is an officer in the Kaiju Defense Force. Momo inquires. How did he manage that? I deadpan and say, probably the same way I can heal a severed arm and create unholy monsters, before returning to my previous task before Momo arrived. I don't know what is with women not believing magic as a rational excuse. What you really need an excuse for is almost getting Airy killed, Momo responds. And I swear to God, you better stop cleaning that fucking robot before I lose it. As I use a toothbrush to remove a particularly stubborn bit of dirt from the robot's side, I ask earnestly, what do you want me to say? Oh, it was a massive mistake. I am such a terrible father. I don't deserve to be around a child as pure as her. I already tell myself that every morning when look in the mirror. It is beating a dead horse at this point. If you wanted someone who could raise her properly, you should have listened to me and put her up for adoption when we first met her. Isaac, Momo murmurs wearily, her voice losing its rage. I told you to stop saying that. And I keep telling you to stop lying to yourself, I respond, concentrating on cleaning an armor plate's stubborn corner. I have no place being around a child. If I had any sense, I wouldn't be around you or Himiko either, Momo. The only reason I stayed is because a friend said that I should. Do you really hate being around us that much? Momo inquires. I can tell she's probably on the verge of tears without even turning around. I sigh and shut the access panel in the bot's head. It isn't about like or hate or anything so simple, I say. I don't think I'll be able to clean for some time. This is about you not accepting what I am, Momo. She tries to say, you are a good person, Isaac, but I turn and interrupt her. No, Momo, I reply. I am a lot of things, but good is not one of them. I can see it, Himiko can see it, and Eri can see it, Momo yells. Why can't you? I growl, because I have seen who I am deep down, as my arms catch fire. Normally, I'm able to control it, but now that I'm angry, it's gone crazy. You don't know who I really am. You don't even know my real name. Momo responds, I know everything I need to know. It doesn't matter what your name is. Why should it? Because I am a very bad person who has done very bad things, I respond. Do you even understand what I went through to get power like mine? Men have to suffer to grow beyond the limits we are bound by. Any humanity I once had is long gone. I know you see it. The madness that festers below the surface when no one is around. I see a good person who tries their best, Momo maintains. I yell, my soul has been damned for years, as the flames flare up and begin to scorch my arms. I bought my place in hell through my own actions. One day, I will return to the pit where monsters like me belong. You have to get this through your thick skull, Momo. I am not the saint you keep trying to see. I am a devil who dreamt of being a man. That is who I was born to be and who I have always been. Nothing you say or do can change that. My soul is stained black with sin and no forgiveness or redemption could ever wash it clean. I don't need you to change, she declares. I fell in love with you, not some fairy tale version I dreamed up. I say, you only know the fairy tale version, Momo, and then I walk away. As my regeneration overtakes the damage and catches up to the burns, the flames start to flicker and eventually go out. I am not the prince in a love story. I am the monster in a horror movie. You don't fix my broken heart. You just stay away and escape. I sigh as I hear her stomping up to me. Now, what will she do? Scream at me? Do you want to strike me? I won't be persuaded by anything she says or does. She spins me around and I feel something soft on my lips, which is why I am so shocked. I'm getting a kiss from her. I, the damned soul who stumbled into Momo Yaoyorozu's life, am being kissed by the stunning genius and billionaire heiress. Why? My hands froze just as I was about to push her away. I have no idea why. I am confident that she would benefit from letting go of these immature emotions. So why am I unable to stop her? Why am I unable to push her away? Perhaps I still harbor a secret desire to be human. For her, Himiko, and Eri. I still harbor a secret desire to be a man. Dreams have to come to an end. I'll have to wake up and accept who I am one day. Not today, though. As I draw Momo closer and my remaining flames go out, I can just dream for the time being. The memories of hell seem a little more distant as I enjoy her warmth, and that's what makes all the difference.
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.